Chapter 1147. Tianqing. He knew that the King Zhongqing wanted to deal with him, but he hadn't thought that the other party would be so vicious as to inflict such grievous torture on Sun Qiong. As the saying goes, even when beating a dog must one look at its owner. To kidnap his subordinate without any prior notice and use such cruel means on the latter, it was clear that the other party was undermining him. "What do I mean?" King Zhongqing asked in a mocking tone. "Bring Vice Hall Master Ming in here." Hualala. As he said those words, 2 guards escorted a figure in. Upon seeing the other party's appearance, Zhong Xian's face turned livid. He recognized that figure. He was the vice head of the Jingyuan City Poison Hall, Ming Zhan. Back then, he willfully chose to side with his own student and attempted to kill Zhong Xian. Unfortunately, Zhong Xian's soul happened to be out at the moment, and eventually, the entire poison hall was reduced to waste as a result of his actions. But wasn't he killed by Hall Master Ruo Qingyuan back then? Why was he still alive? And from the looks of it, he wasn't even in the slightest injured. On the contrary, it seemed like he had even managed to advance his cultivation up a notch. Could it be that something had happened to the poison hall? Furthermore, despite Sun Qiong being bound by heavy chains, there was nothing on Ming Zhan at all. It was as if he was an honored guest of King Zhongqing. Zhong Xian's face turned livid. "Paying respects to your highness." Ming Zhan clasped his fist. King Zhongqing nodded and said, "Speak of what you know." "I used to be the vice head of the Jingyuan Empire Poison Hall, located in the territory of Hongyuan Empire. 2 months ago, Sun Qiong altered his appearance and dropped by our poison hall, claiming to be the successor of the poison hall's founder. He displayed exceptional mastery in the way of poison that even I am unable to match up with." Ming Zhan swiftly revealed everything that had happened at the poison hall. After which, he entrusted the founder to Poison Hall Bai and Poison Master Hai. "Initially, I was to be executed for my actions, but it's fortunate that the one who was responsible for executing me was my student, and it was due to that that I was able to escape with my life." The successor of the Poison Hall's founder? If I hadn't heard this with my own ears, I would truly dare not believe such a matter. "Zhongshe, this Sun Qiong over here is your subordinate, and yet, he is also a formidable poison master as well. What do you have to say for yourself?" Sneering coldly, King Zhongqing gazed down at Zhong Xian haughtily. "You are accusing me of colluding with the poison masters over this?" Zhong Xian was still wondering if the other party had managed to obtain some kind of evidence regarding the matter, but it turned out to be this much only. Shaking his head, he continued, "Putting aside the fact that this Ming Zhan fellow over here has dubious backgrounds, just the fact that he's a vice head of the poison hall should warrant him a death penalty. So, why is he standing right here, honored as a guest in your manor? Could it be that King Zhongqing has colluded with the poison hall? Are you, in fact, a poison master, just like what others say of you?" "Audacious!" King Zhongqing bellowed furiously. "You are the one being audacious over here." Zhong Xian interjected with a roar. "There are plenty of people in the world who goes by the name of Sun Qiong, and yet, based on this kind of indeterminate evidence, you kidnapped my butler and tortured him? If I were to capture a dog and confer it the name of King Zhongqing, can I say that you are a dog? If my butler is truly the successor of the poison hall's founder, you will have long been poisoned to death for treating him in such a manner." "You!" Not expecting the other party to be so crude in his words, King Zhongqing nearly spurted blood. With a face livid with rage, he harumphed, "My men proceeded carefully and subdued your butler before he could even retaliate, so naturally, he wouldn't have a chance to strike at all. There is no doubt about Ming Zhan's identity, and he has voluntarily left the poison hall to side with us. In fact, he has led our men to eradicate the Jingyuan City Poison Hall, and his merits are more than sufficient to make up for his wrongdoing." Eradicate the Jingyuan City Poison Hall? Gudding, Zhong Xian's heart skipped a beat. As formidable as the Jingyuan City Poison Hall was, if there was an insider to lead the elite forces of the Qingyuan Empire in, it would indeed be difficult for the Poison Hall to stand its ground. If the Poison Hall were to be destroyed, what would become of Elder Shu and the others? He hadn't thought that so much would happen over a short frame of 2 months. Indeed, no matter how he was before, his accomplishments are more than sufficient to bring credibility to his words. Furthermore, we have corroborated his words with the confessions of the other poison masters of the Jingyuan City Poison Hall, so there is no doubt about the authenticity of this matter. Standing up, King Zhongqing flung his sleeves and harumphed. Despite being a master teacher, you actually kept such a reprehensible poison master by your side. This is a blatant infringement of the Master Teacher Pavilion's rules. For the safety of Qingyuan City, I am obliged to apprehend you. For the safety of Qingyuan City, I, Zhong Xian, am an upright master teacher of the Master Teacher Pavilion. If there's any problem with me, it should be the Master Teacher Pavilion to pass judgment. And you? Pardon me, but I don't believe that you are in charge of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion. When a master teacher erred, only the Master Teacher Pavilion was qualified to judge them. A mere king of the conferred empire had no rights to take things in his own hand. I know that I'm not qualified to judge this matter, so I specially reported this matter to Vice Pavilion Master Tian Qing of the Master Teacher Pavilion to have him judge this matter. Saying these words, King Zhongqing clasped his fist towards the hunched-over elder seated beside him. Tian Qing. Hearing that name, Zhong Xian recalled a matter, and his eyes narrowed. Huala. But before he could say a word, the elder stood up, and it was only then did everyone notice the 7 stars on the emblem pinned on his chest. A 7-star master teacher, Vice Pavilion Master. Luo Chichi and Yu Fei were alarmed, and they quickly turned their gazes towards Zhong Xian. If the Master Teacher Pavilion wasn't involved in this matter, Zhong Xian might still be able to use his identity as a master teacher to avoid this matter. Yet, the other party actually brought a Vice Pavilion Master of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion in. This would really complicate matters. He sure did come prepared. Swiftly calming down, Zhong Xian began reanalyzing the situation. Previously, he had heard Wu Shi briefly introduce the current circumstances within the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion. The current Pavilion Master, Go Tianzi, was a leaving Aperture Realm primary stage expert. However, he had retired from managing the affairs of the Master Teacher Pavilion since many years ago, and currently, Vice Pavilion Master Tian was the one who was in charge. As such, despite being a Vice Pavilion Master, Tian Qing wielded authority comparable to the Pavilion Master himself, making him one of the most powerful individuals in Qingyuan City. Zhong Xian had thought this would only be a small conflict. Perhaps he might have accidentally crossed King Zhongqing somewhere and the latter wanted to embarrass him. He hadn't thought that the latter would actually bring Vice Pavilion Master Tian into the picture as well. As the person in charge of the Regional Master Teacher Pavilion, Vice Pavilion Master Tian had the right to liaise with the headquarters. If the other party were to judge that he had colluded with the Poison Hall, he would never be able to cleanse his reputation. But of course, while the Jingyuan City Poison Hall had a poor reputation, it hadn't really caused too much harm. At the very most, being associated with it would only tarnish Zhong Xian's reputation. Zhongshe, I have heard of your affairs, and I know that you are a person who possesses exceptional talent and capabilities. Vice Pavilion Master Tian turned to Zhong Xian and smiled. King Zhongqing is in charge of the defenses of Qingyuan City. Given that he has uncovered evidence that suggests that Sun Qiong is a poison master, it's his responsibility to look into the matter, so I hope that you don't take this personally. The reason why he has invited you over to his manor instead of the Master Teacher Pavilion is in hopes of not blowing the matter up. After all, such a matter would soil the reputation of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy, and this isn't something that any one of us would like to see. At this point, Vice Pavilion Master Tian glanced at Ming Zhen before continuing on. I have personally investigated the background of Poison Master Ming Zhen and the words that he has spoken, and I believe that his words can be trusted. However, worry not. Even though Sun Qiong is a poison master, the Master Teacher Pavilion will take into account the fact that you are unaware of the matter when passing judgment. Even though Sun Qiong is a poison master? Hearing how affirmative Vice Pavilion Master Tian's words were, Zhong Xian frowned in displeasure. Since Vice Pavilion Master Tian has seen this matter from the start to the end, surely you should be clearer than anyone else here whether Sun Qiong is a poison master or not, right? While a poison master may look like any other cultivator on the surface, their frequent consumption and concocting of poison would inevitably result in some internal changes in their body. In fact, There were some formidable poison masters who could even poison an entire city to death with just a droplet of their blood. On the other hand, Sun Qiong cultivated the orthodox and upright simplified version of the Heaven's Path divine art. His zhenqi was pure and attributeless, and that should be more than sufficient evidence to prove that he wasn't a poison master. Considering that Vice Pavilion Tian was a 7-star pinnacle master teacher, he should know better than anyone that Sun Qiong wasn't a poison master. Yet, to be insisting that Sun Qiong was indeed a poison master here, it was obvious that he had chosen to side with King Zhongqing. Even though this Sun Qiong over here doesn't have the prowess of a 6-star poison master, his very deed of escorting the founder of the Poison Hall back to the Poison Hall headquarters is a grievous mistake in itself. The founder of the Poison Hall is said to possess the constitution of disaster, and as long as she desires so, she could easily bring great catastrophe upon mankind. You might not understand because you haven't seen the records regarding the war between mankind and the otherworldly demonic tribe several dozen millenniums ago, but I had the privilege of looking through them in the Master-Teacher Pavilion of the Empire Alliance. It was truly a huge tragedy that could hardly be described with words. Countless master teachers and innocent souls had died of poison in the Long War, and indubitably, the founder of the Poison Hall had a significant role to play in the matter. Vice Pavilion Master Tian spoke righteously with the air of one who was worried for the future of the world. Mankind had suffered great casualties in the fight against the otherworldly demonic tribe, especially from the lethal poison they utilized. If not for the founder of the Poison Hall, there wouldn't have been a poison master occupation in the first place, and such a tragedy wouldn't have occurred. It could be said that the founder was the very enemy of mankind herself. As a master teacher, you have a duty to mankind. And yet, you allowed your own subordinate to act willfully and escort the founder of the Poison Hall back to her place. You have truly let all of us down this time around. Vice Pavilion Master Tian sighed deeply. However, if you were to confess to this matter, I'll implore the Master Teacher Pavilion to show leniency to you. Vice Pavilion Master Tian, do you honestly believe the nonsense about the founder of the Poison Hall? Zhong Xian shook his head. If I recall correctly, the founder is a figure from the same era as Kongsha. Not even Kongsha could survive the trial of time, so do you think that it makes sense for the founder of the Poison Hall to still be alive at this point in time? Naturally, I am skeptical of the matter as well. However, Mingzhen has no reason to lie either. From what I know, even a celestial master teacher has recently appeared in the world, so I don't think that the revival of the founder of the Poison Hall is something too absurd to believe. Vice Pavilion Head Tian said. Celestial Master Teacher? Zhong Xian scoffed. How can that be? If that is true, the matter would have long spread far and wide in the world. There's no way that I, as the principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy, would be oblivious to it. It's a deduction made based on the recent happenings in our Teacher Acknowledgement Hall. Currently, the news has been sealed for fear of the otherworldly demonic tribe learning of the matter, so only a handful of people in our Qingyuan branch knows of this matter. Vice Pavilion Head Tian replied. It might sound preposterous, but as a master teacher, we have a duty to the masses. It's better to be safe than sorry. So, Vice Pavilion Master Tian intends to. Simple. For the grievous crimes that he has committed, Sun Qiong must be executed on the spot. On the other hand, Zhongshu, while you might not have played a direct role in the matter, your oversight in managing your subordinates have indirectly resulted in the happening of this tragedy. As such, you must be punished for your actions as well. You will be exiled to the subterranean gallery for 3 months in order to make up for your wrongdoings with merit. Vice Pavilion Master Tian said. You want to execute Sun Qiong on the spot and exile me to the subterranean gallery? Zhong Xian felt as if he had heard a hilarious joke. He abruptly stood up and patted his bottom before turning his gaze towards Vice Pavilion Master Tian. What if? I refuse. Chapter 1148. Wreaking havoc in the King Manor. Even though 3 months in the subterranean gallery couldn't be considered to be a severe punishment, it couldn't be said to be a light one either. The subterranean gallery was the intersection point between the master-teacher continent and the otherworldly battlefields. As such, it was constantly plagued with overwhelming killing intent. From time to time, otherworldly demons might even appear. Without a doubt, it was one of the most dangerous lands on the master-teacher continent, and most of those who ventured into its depths never return alive. Only master-teachers who had committed unpardonable crimes or wanted to make one last contribution to mankind would apply to enter those lands. This was also the same with school head Lu Feng back then. Putting aside the fact that Sun Qiong wasn't a poison master, even if he was, he hadn't committed any harm to others, so how could he be said to have committed a grievous crime? Not even a master-teacher had the right to claim the life of an innocent man, and since Sun Qiong hadn't erred, Zhongxian couldn't possibly be implicated into the matter as well. For the vice-head of the master-teacher pavilion, a person who wields great authority in his hands, to judge a matter in such a manner. How ludicrous! Vice Pavilion Master Tian is already being magnanimous by showing you leniency for your actions. You really don't know what is best for you. King Zhongqing roared furiously. You can have this kind of leniency for yourself. Zhongxian couldn't be bothered with King Zhongqing any longer. Instead, he walked straight up to Sun Qiong. Voila! Seeing Zhongxian walking towards them, the two guards who were standing beside Sun Qiong swiftly drew their weapons warily. However, barely after their swords left their sheath, they abruptly shattered into two with a crisp echo, and the tip of their swords flew into the distance. Right after that, the two guards were suddenly sent flying with a deep moan, crashing heavily onto a pillar right outside the hall before blacking out. At this point, Zhongxian was already standing before Sun Qiong, and sighing deeply, he said, "You have suffered." In the next moment, the golden soul lock on Sun Qiong suddenly flew out and fell onto the ground. Following that, Zhongxian flicked his finger towards Sun Qiong. Tzzzzzzzz. The latter's injuries began recovering at a pace visible to the eye. As Sun Qiong's cultivation was far lower than his, it didn't take long for the Heaven's Pathshanqi to heal his injuries. Audacious! Zhongxian, this is Qingyuan City, not your Hongyuan Empire. To disregard the earnest lecturing of a senior master teacher and act on your own accord, showing no regards for the law at all, a person like you isn't worthy to be a master teacher. Men, take him down, King Zhongqing roared. Hualala. Right after saying those words, a bunch of men suddenly barged into the hall. Young master. Seeing that the young master was actually standing against the first king of Qingyuan conferred empire for him, Sun Qiong couldn't help but feel a surge of warmth run through his heart. Falling out with a vice-head of a conferred empire master-teacher pavilion could possibly mean giving his future away, and yet, the young master still did so unhesitatingly just to save a servant like him. To him, this was a debt of gratitude greater than the heaven itself. Luo Chichi and Yu Fei also swiftly moved over to Zhongxian and stood by his side as they warily scanned their surroundings. Despite the sudden onslaught of guards, Zhongxian didn't pay them any heed. Instead, he turned straight towards King Zhongqing and uttered coldly, "You wish to capture me? King Zhongqing, it seems like you really don't fear death. Or perhaps, do you honestly think that I dare not kill you? Kill me? You? Ha ha ha, it seems like becoming the principal of Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy has really got to your head. A mere 6-star master teacher like you dare to speak of killing me. The fact that you disrespected Vice Pavilion Tian is more than sufficient to have you indicted on the grounds of insubordination. Today, I shall help the Master Teacher Pavilion purge its black sheep." Sneering coldly, the aura shrouding King Zhongqing swiftly intensified, and it took a mere blink of an eye for it to reach its peak. Under the immense power he was emanating, the surrounding air began to distort. This was the overwhelming might of a Saint Fordan cultivator, a primordial spirit realm expert. His strength had already surpassed the head of the Formation Master Guild, Guild Leader Han, reaching a level on par with Wu Shi prior to entering the Qiuwu Palace. King Zhongqing, no matter what, Zhongshe is still our master teacher. Even if he has erred, he can only be judged in our master teacher pavilion. It'll do to just capture him, make sure to spare his life. Seeing that King Zhongqing was going to make a move, Vice Pavilion Master Tian instructed. "Rest assured, Vice Pavilion Master Tian. I won't go too far." Sneering coldly, King Zhongqing thrust his palm forward, and in an instant, it felt as if ominous clouds had gathered within the hall, and a powerful might reminiscent of the relentless waves of the ocean began crashing down upon Zhongxian. On top of that, perhaps due to cultivating some kind of secret art, The first king's zhengqi was not only condensed and powerful, it was also imbued with the scent of the battlefield, leaving one feeling as if one was standing amidst of mountains of corpses and rivers of blood. That is Scarlet Robe of Carnage? Upon seeing the move, Luo Chich's eyebrows knitted together warily. Scarlet Robe of Carnage? It's a technique that boasts of the strongest killing intent in Qingyuan Empire. Those who cultivate this technique must use fresh blood as a medium in order to advance their mastery in the technique. Once one starts practicing the technique, there's no turning back. The very sight of blood will trigger one's bloodlust, causing one to go into a manic. It's a truly sinister technique. Even the art of drawing oceans will struggle to be a match for it, Luo Chichi explained grimly. However, due to the innately destructive nature of the technique, there was no master teacher or combat master who is willing to learn it. Who could have thought that a king of Qingyuan Empire would actually learn such a depraved technique? Teacher, you must be careful. A mere small fry. In contrast to Luo Chichi's anxiety, Zhongxian didn't show the slightest hint of panic. Instead, with a derisive smile, he flicked his finger. Su. The golden soul lock immediately flew towards King Zhongqing at a speed as swift as a streak of lightning, and in just an instant, it collided with the powerful palm strike that King Zhongqing executed an instant ago. Astonishingly, the palm strike didn't even hinder the advancement of the golden soul lock by even the slightest. It swiftly overwhelmed the palm thrust and arrived right before King Zhongqing Peng. The golden soul lock struck King Zhongqing's chest squarely, and the latter's face immediately reddened from the impact before spurting a mouthful of blood. Deng 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 deng. He swiftly retreated 8 steps in order to ward off the impact before crashing into the exquisitely carved wooden chair behind him. The chair swiftly caved into the pressure and exploded into countless smithereens. King Zhongqing had to drive his zhengqi furiously and exert a relentless wave of might behind before he was able to finally steady his figure. At this point, he felt his blood within his body billowing furiously, and his face paled from frailty. He stared at the young man before him in disbelief, unable to accept what he had just experienced. He was a Saint 4 Dan primordial spirit realm pinnacle expert, whereas the other party was only a Saint 2 Dan spiritual perception realm pinnacle cultivator. There was a gap of 2 whole realms between them. Logically speaking, this should be an unbreachable gap for any cultivator, no matter how skilled a fighter one was, and yet the other party was actually able to neutralize his palm strike with such ease and even knock him back at that. Too frightening. King Zhongqing was not the only one astonished by the happenings. Vice Pavilion Master Tian was startled as well. Zhongxian's fighting prowess had far surpassed his imagination. Such an outcome had never flashed across his mind, not even once. No wonder you dared to act so arrogantly, so you do have something up your sleeves. However, if this is all you got, I'll make sure you dearly regret your actions. Gesturing to Vice Pavilion Master Tian that he didn't have to make a move, King Zhongqing roared furiously as he flicked his 5 fingers forth furiously. At the same time, he flicked his wrist forcefully, and his palm fell downward with a shape reminiscent of a lotus leaf. 3 Autumn Palm. Zhongxian recognized the battle technique. Having browsed through all of the books in the Combat Master Hall's martial arts division and internalized them, he couldn't be any more familiar with this battle technique. 3 Autumns of Osman thus, 10 Li of Lotus Flower. The might of this technique was comparable to the Grand Constellation Finger, and it was relatively famous for its difficulty within the Combat Master Hall. There were many combat masters who had to spend decades on it before managing to achieve some degree of mastery in it. Yet, King Zhongqing had actually managed to achieve a mastery of major accomplishment in it. Such a formidable battle technique paired with the Scarlet Robe of Carnage made the hall feel as if it had turned into a marshland. Crimson-blooded lotuses bloomed one after another eerily, and it felt as if they would reap the soul and life of those who dared to approach them. This is indeed a powerful battle technique. Even Division Head Liao and the others would have to retreat temporarily before its immense might, but it's a pity that you picked the wrong opponent. Shaking his head, Zhongxian took a step forward instead of retreating, stepping right upon one of the scarlet lotuses. He raised his finger and tapped forward. Wang. The brilliance of the stars shimmered on his fingertip, outshining even the radiance of the night illumination pearls embedded on the roof. A furious surge of zhenqi burst forth from his fingertip, tearing apart the 3 autumn palm in an instant. In the next moment, blood spurted wildly from King Zhongqing's mouth, and he was forced to retreat in a fluster yet again. A few steps later, his back crashed heavily onto the wall behind him. Hualala! Dust fell from the ceiling, cloaking his figure. You know of the flaws of the 3 autumn palm? King Zhongqing couldn't believe his eyes. Under normal circumstances, given that the Grand Constellation Finger and 3 autumn palm were 2 battle techniques of equivalent might, even if they were to clash directly with one another, he shouldn't have suffered such an utter defeat. But somehow, Zhong Xian seemed to have found the flaws in his technique and aimed his attack directly at it, causing his zhenqi to wither. As a result, his offense was subdued in an instant, causing him to sustain severe injuries. Zhong Xian couldn't be bothered to explain anything to King Zhongqing at all. Placing his hands behind his back loftily, he calmly turned to Sun Qiong and said, "He has caused you great suffering, so how do you think we should deal with him? Since he used the golden soul lock to pierce my chest, it's only right to return the favor to him." Sun Qiong spat through gritted teeth. That's simple. Zhong Xian smiled softly as he raised his palm once more. Voila! The golden soul lock on the ground immediately flew into the air and slithered menacingly as if a vicious snake. On the other hand, seeing that Zhong Xian was actually discussing with a mere subordinate on how he should be dealt with, King Zhongqing felt deeply humiliated. His face turned crimson, and he bellowed furiously, "What are you all waiting for? Take him down!" Voila! Right after those words were spoken, the guards standing in the surroundings immediately charged forward with furious battle cries. Me couldn't even be bothered to turn around. Zhong Xian stomped his feet on the ground. Voila! A surge of zhenqi rippled from his feet, and in the blink of an eye, the formation shrouding the hall came to life, blocking all of the guards outside. No matter how hard they knocked against the formation, it simply wouldn't budge. Even you are nothing to me. Do you think that a bunch of small fries will be able to stop me? Zhong Xian glanced at King Zhongqing coldly. Having mastered everything within the Combat Master Hall, Zhong Xian's prowess could be considered to be invincible amongst primordial spirit realm. Even if King Zhongqing was an exceptional cultivator, his strength still meant nothing before him. Voila! Right after saying those words, the golden soul lock rose up once more, seemingly ready to devour the figure before him whole. Vice Hall Master Tian, save me. In face of the monstrous strength of the young man before him, the desperate King Zhongqing could only turn to the elder beside him for help. This is enough. Any more than this, and I will have to issue a master-teacher arrest warrant on you. At this point, Vice Pavilion Master Tian could also see that King Zhongqing wasn't a match either. Shaking his head, he stepped forward and raised his palm, wanting to stop the golden soul lock from making a move against King Zhongqing. However, in that instant, with a loud whiz, a massive cauldron abruptly fell from the sky. Putong! It fell straight on the head of Vice Pavilion Master Tian, causing the latter to collapse onto the ground, sprawled over in a shape. Master, where is the fellow whom you want me to pummel? Watch as I reduce that bastard to cinders for you. Zhong Xian. Vice Pavilion Master Tian Qing. Chapter 1149 Pummeling the Vice Pavilion Master. The one who was speaking was the Golden Origin Cauldron. Zhong Xian had learned spirit enchantment previously at the Spirit Awakener Guild, and in the 3 days he spent in the Combat Master Hall, he found some spare time to wake the Golden Origin Cauldron up from its coma. It might have been a difficult feat for any other Spirit Awakener, but as one who had cultivated the Heaven's Path spirit enchantment art, as long as he were to be a bit more meticulous, it actually wasn't something too difficult to achieve. Prior to heading to entering the Qiu Wu Palace, the Golden Origin Cauldron had already been at primordial spirit realm pinnacle. While the onslaught of the lightning had caused its spirit to go dormant, it had also tempered it, allowing it to achieve a breakthrough swiftly after it awoke from its coma, achieving the same level of strength as Wu Shu, half leaving Aperture Realm. As long as Zhong Xian could find fitting materials to reforge it, it was only a matter of time before it achieved a breakthrough to leaving Aperture Realm. Given the Golden Origin Cauldron rise in power, as well as the advantage it wielded as a Saint Intermediate tier artifact, Vice Pavilion Master Tian was already smashed into the ground before he could even process what was going on. Truly, a pitiful state he was in. He's right below you. I only asked you to stop him, not to kill him. Seeing how unreliable the Golden Origin Cauldron was, smashing Vice Pavilion Master Tian into the ground as soon as it appeared, Zhongxian slapped his forehead, speechless. Can't you at least take a look before making a move? Look at what you have done. Now that a vice head of the Master Teacher Pavilion had been smacked into the ground, how should this matter be resolved? He's below me. Taken aback, the Golden Origin Cauldron slowly shifted sideward before seeing a huge character on the ground with a figure embedded in it. Ah! Master, I didn't do it on purpose. The Golden Origin Cauldron said apologetically. You're courting death. Hong Long. Before the Golden Origin Cauldron could finish his words, Vice Pavilion Master Tian abruptly flew out from the depression of the ground, and powerful aura burst from his acupoints, rippling into the surroundings. At this point, he felt so furious that he could explode on the spot. For the person who commanded the entire Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion to be crushed beneath the bottom of a mere Saint-tier artifact, he felt so humiliated that he could just blow up. Zhongxian, it is insubordination for you to order your Saint-tier artifact to assault a 7-star Master Teacher. This is a blatant disregard for the dignity of the way of teacher, a complete lack of respect for your elders. A person like you isn't worthy of being a Master Teacher. Roaring furiously, Vice Pavilion Master Tian thrust his palm towards Zhongxian. It must be said that the might wielded by Vice Pavilion Master Tian was indeed fearsome. Even King Zhongqing was nowhere on par with him. That single palm strike caused the surrounding air current to suddenly billow furiously, and it felt as if the entire hall would collapse under the pressure at any time soon. Your opponent is me. Seeing that the other party was attempting to attack its owner, the Golden Origin Cauldron roared in anger. It wasn't easy for it to regain consciousness, and it had been wanting to find an opportunity to perform before its master. Yet, that fellow actually snubbed him and went straight for its owner. This was unforgivable. Hula! The massive cauldron flung itself forcefully towards Vice Pavilion Master Tian. Peng! The incredible momentum of the charging cauldron succeeded in neutralizing Vice Pavilion Master's palm strike in an instant. However, at the same time, the impact of the collision also caused the Golden Origin Cauldron to skid back for several dozen meters before coming to a halt. The both of them were actually equally matched. As expected of a vice head of the Master Teacher Pavilion, he is indeed formidable, Zhongxian thought. If he had to face Vice Pavilion Master Tian in a straightforward battle, there was a very good chance that it would end in his defeat. While he was already invincible against all the primordial spirit realm cultivators, he was still a little lacking from being able to deal with half-leaving aperture realm experts. Knowing that it would take a long time before there was a conclusion for the battle between Vice Pavilion Master Tian and the Golden Origin Cauldron, Zhongxian decisively turned his attention away from them and turned his sights back to King Zhongqing. It's your turn. You. Vice Pavilion Master Tian is here. If you were to make a move against me here, there's no way he will let you off. You're courting death. King Zhongqing roared furiously. All along, he had thought that the figure he was going to deal with was just an insignificant figure from an insignificant land. As long as he were to pull his weight, the other party would surely be swiftly cave-in. Who could have thought that the other party was not only strong, he was even brazen enough to make a move against the Vice Pavilion Master Tian. Formalities were extremely important to master teachers after all. Only one who conducted himself properly could be qualified to lecture others, and assaulting a higher-ranked master teacher was a severe breach of the formalities. If the Master Teacher Pavilion were to judge the other party for this matter, being stripped of his master teacher license could be said to be the least of his concerns. More than that, he could very well be executed on the spot to make an example for others to see, and yet, to do so for a mere subordinate. Was that fellow insane? Whether I am courting death or not, it's none of your business. However, for hurting my butler, you have to pay the price. Zhongxian uttered coldly as he flicked his wrist. Huala! The golden soul lock suddenly leaped up and pierced King Zhongqing. Puha! It stabbed right into his chest. The golden soul lock had the ability to seal cultivation. As soon as it entered King Zhongqing's body, the latter's aura immediately began wilting. The excruciating pain of a foreign object piercing into his body left him spasming frenziedly, and for that moment, he thought that he would go insane from the pain. He's powerless now, go and exact your vengeance. Zhongxian waved his hand leisurely. In his heart, Sun Qiong was as important as his direct disciples. The other party's act of kidnapping Sun Qiong and deploying heavy torture on him had truly touched his bottom line, and it was already an act of mercy that he didn't kill the other party on the spot. Yes. Sun Qiong walked up to King Zhongqing, and gazing down on the latter, he sneered, "You had fun kidnapping me, didn't you? You should have a taste of your own medicine." He flicked his wrist, whipped out a dagger, and swiped it right into King Zhongqing's body. Even though King Zhongqing was a primordial spirit realm expert, he hadn't cultivated his body to a nigh indestructible level like Zhongxian, and his cultivation was also sealed by the golden soul lock as well. As such, the dagger sunk right into King Zhongqing's body, and blood began flowing out from his body. The immense pain caused King Zhongqing to howl in agony. However, before he could finish his words, he saw Sun Qiong whipping out a jar of salt from somewhere and spreading it generously on his wound. "Bear with it, I'll help you apply some medicine now." King Zhongqing. After applying a fair amount of salt on the wound, Sun Qiong picked up his dagger once more, brandished it to create another wound, and proceeded on to apply salt on it as well. Zhongxian, having watched the happenings up to this point, couldn't help but avert his gaze. It was simply too cruel. However, he could tell that the Sun Qiong had been put through far more brutal torture than this while healing him up previously. In a sense, Sun Qiong's rage and means weren't unjustified. On the other side, Vice Pavilion Master Tian and the Golden Origin Cauldron were still battling with one another, and both sides were equally matched. Thus, Zhongxian turned his sights to Mingzhen instead. The ex-vice head of the Poison Hall had attempted to escape as soon as he realized that the situation had gone awry, but the activated formation around the hall not only prevented those outside from entering, it also prevented those within from leaving. Seeing that Zhongxian was staring at him intently, Mingzhen backed away in horror. "Come over," Zhongxian roared. With a flick of his wrist, Mingzhen suddenly felt a powerful force pulling him right in front of Zhongxian before binding him tightly, preventing him from moving. Zhongxian set up an isolation barrier with a wave of his hand to prevent Luo Chichi and the others from hearing anything before asking coldly, "What happened to the Poison Hall? Where is Elder Shu Yu and the others? Why you? How do you know about Shu Yu?" Mingzhen was astonished to hear that name coming out of Zhongxian's mouth. Back then, when Zhongxian headed to the Poison Hall, he had disguised him and assumed the identity of Sun Qiong. As such, Mingzhen was unable to recognize the young man standing before him. "Wait, it can't be that, you are Sun Qiong?" Mingzhen was no fool either. It took only a moment for him to understand what was going on, and his eyes narrowed in horror. "Not bad, I hope that you can remain this intelligent when you answer my questions." Zhongxian's lips curled up as he patted Mingzhen's shoulders, sending a surge of zhenqi into the other party's body. Arth! The zhenqi within Mingzhen's body warped into lethal poison, leaving cold sweat pouring down his convulsing body. Not even Poison Master Hai and the others were able to endure the agony of the Heaven's Path zhenqi, let alone him. "You are a master teacher. It's already a grievous crime for you to disregard Vice Pavilion Master Tian's authority. If you were to kill me, the Master Teacher Pavilion will conduct a thorough investigation of you." Clenching his fists to bear the unbearable pain, Mingzhen said. Knowing that the man before him had a close relationship with Elder Shu Yu, he swiftly realized that the young man could possibly hold a grudge against him due to his actions which resulted in the annihilation of the Poison Hall. As such, he hurriedly said those words in hopes that he could convince the other party to stop. "It seems like you aren't as intelligent as I thought. I only want to hear things I want to hear. Since you know that I'm the successor of the Poison Hall's founder, you should also know that I have the means to end your life discreetly without having anyone trace it back to me." Zhongxian replied impassively. It might have been difficult for any other master teachers to kill an individual without having the Master Teacher Pavilion trace the case back to them, but Zhongxian was a poison master. He had many ways of killing a person without leaving behind any clues to him. Hearing those bone-chilling words, Mingzhen realized that the other party would really do so without any hesitation. Thus, he gritted his teeth and said, "Back then, after I fled from the Poison Hall, I headed straight here." "You headed towards Qingyuan City?" You are acquainted with King Zhongqing beforehand? Zhong Xian asked. After fleeing from the poison hall, in order to ensure that no one would pursue him, he would surely head in a direction where he deemed that he would be safe. The fact that he chose to head here meant that it was likely that he had already known King Zhongqing beforehand, and he was certain that the latter could provide him cover. That's right, we have some business dealings with one another. I sold him quite a handful of lethal poison, and in exchange, he gave me many valuable cultivation resources. Mingzhen confessed. Hearing those words, Zhong Xian's face turned grim. It seemed like Yu Fei'er's news was accurate. However, instead of being a poison master himself, King Zhongqing just had dealings with the poison hall. Nevertheless, there were still some doubts about the matter. You said that he purchased lethal poison from you, but is he able to use it? Zhong Xian frowned. Putting aside the concoction of poison, the usage of poison was also an incredibly profound art as well. Even if those who weren't poison masters were to obtain lethal poison, they would only be able to use it crudely, making it highly possible that they would be discovered. This was the case with Yu Shu back then as well. Despite receiving lethal poison from the otherworldly demonic tribe, his ability to utilize poison was lacking, which prevented him from using it too often. I don't know about that. However, he has an exceptionally high demand for high-grade poisons. Most of the grade 7 poisons which I have applied by the headquarters ended up being sold to him. Mingzhen dared not to hide anything from Zhong Xian. I see. Zhong Xian replied as he shot a doubtful gaze towards King Zhongqing. That fellow was an honored king of Qingyuan Empire, and there didn't seem to be any incidents where the other party used the poison he had purchased to commit atrocities. As such, despite being a master teacher, he wasn't in a good position to interfere too much in this matter either. Otherwise, it could very well cause some strife between Qingyuan Empire and the Master Teacher Pavilion. Since King Zhongqing was the one to provoke him through Sun Qiong first, Zhong Xian's actions could still be justified as self-defense. However, if he wanted to have King Zhongqing indicted for the purchase of poison, he would have to go through the royal court. What happened to Shu Yu and the others? Zhong Xian turned his attention back to Mingzhen and asked. I spent my whole life toiling for the poison hall, only to be sentenced to a death penalty in the end. Indignant, I sought King Zhongqing, hoping to use his hand to return me justice. Yet, wanting to make use of this incident to win himself some merit, King Zhongqing ignored my opposition and captured everyone from the poison hall. Those who retaliated against him back then have all been killed. At this point, bitterness surfaced on Mingzhen's face. As much as I hate Shu Yu and the others for putting me in such a plight, I still view myself as a member of the poison hall. It's honestly not my wish to see this happen. Mingzhen shook his head. What was done, nothing he said would change anything at this point in time. However, I can tell you that Elder Shu Yu isn't dead yet. Chapter 1150, Golden Origin Cauldron vs. Vice Pavilion Master Tian. He isn't dead yet? Zhong Xian's eyes lit up. Where is he then? Putting his trust in Zhong Xian, Elder Shu had taken him to the poison hall. If the latter were to die as a result of that, he would surely feel deeply guilty. He was captured by King Zhongqing and is currently being held in the underground prison, Mingzhen said. Underground prison? That's all I know. It seems like King Zhongqing has spared them in order to have Elder Shu and the others concoct a more formidable poison for him, but I don't know many details about the matter, Mingzhen explained. I see. Zhong Xian nodded. Regardless of what King Zhongqing was up to, it was enough for him to know that Elder Shu and the others were still alive. However, this was not the time to save them yet. Otherwise, the others would surely use this as an excuse to attack him and pin some kind of crime on him. After some questioning, Zhong Xian confirmed that Elder Shu and the others were still fine at the moment, and he heaved a sigh of relief. You are currently afflicted with my poison, and only I have the cure for it. You are an intelligent man, so I believe I need not tell you what you should and shouldn't say. Why yes. Mingzhen nodded hurriedly. The young man before him was an individual who could even poison Hall Master Ruo's dark gold venom beetle, and not even Poison Master Bai and Poison Master Hai from the headquarters dared oppose him. His mastery in the way of poison could be said to have reached an unfathomable level, a level that Mingzhen would never be able to achieve. Since that was the case, the only option left for him was to follow the other party's orders obediently. His questions having been answered, Zhongxian released the isolation barrier around him with a wave of his hand. Peng 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 peng. As soon as the barrier was released, a series of crashing sounds echoed in his ears. Raising his gaze, he saw that Vice Pavilion Master Tian was still battling with the Golden Origin Cauldron. With blazing flames burning within it, it was apparent that the Golden Origin Cauldron was using all its might to attack Vice Pavilion Master Tian. On the other hand, Vice Pavilion Master Tian also did not seem to be faring too well against the Golden Origin Cauldron's relentless attack. A trail of blood was flowing down the corner of his lips, signifying that he had already suffered considerable internal injuries. As powerful as Vice Pavilion Master Tian was, the Golden Origin Cauldron was no pushover either. For the time being, it seemed like the fight would still go on for quite some time more before it reached a conclusion. After noting that the Golden Origin Cauldron was not at a disadvantage against Vice Pavilion Master Tian, Zhongxian turned his gaze to King Zhongqing. At this moment, King Zhongqing's body was completely covered in blood. There were at least 50 small holes on his body, sliced open by Sun Qiong. His breathing was extremely weak and erratic, and it felt like he might just pass away at any moment. "You blind fool, how dare you torture me? You must not know whose butler I am," Sun Qiong bellowed as he brandished the sharp dagger in his hand furiously, venting the grievances he had suffered before. Zhongxian shook his head. "Sun Qiong, calm down. Don't accidentally kill him in the heat of the moment. Don't worry, young master." Hearing the order, Sun Qiong nodded before whipping out a bottle of chili and spraying it over King Zhongqing's wounds. Seeing that King Zhongqing might really die if Sun Qiong was left to do as he pleased, he was just about to step forward to stop him when Luo Chichi and Yu Fei suddenly walked over with deeply worried looks. "Zhongshe, it won't be easy to resolve this situation after blowing it up to this extent," Yu Fei remarked worriedly. Zhongxian had done it to save Sun Qiong, but still, the other party was still the first king of the Qingyuan Empire and the most authoritative vice-head of the Master-Teacher Pavilion. To pummel them viciously, if news of the matter reached the Master-Teacher Pavilion, this could become a huge issue. At best, only his Master-Teacher license would be revoked. "It's no problem. If it were any other Master-Teacher, I would not dare do something like this. However, if it's this Vice Pavilion Master Tian, then there won't be a problem at all." Zhongxian shook his head as he mentally calculated the time. After which, he whipped out a jade token and tapped on it lightly, sending a message out. "There won't be a problem at all." The duo was unable to comprehend Zhongxian's words. Vice Pavilion Master Tian could be considered one of the most esteemed and authoritative individuals in the Qingyuan Empire, so how could there be no problem at all? There's no doubt that King Zhongqing has colluded with the Poison Hall, but not only did this Vice Pavilion Master Tian fail to investigate the matter clearly, he even shifted the blame toward me. There is bound to be something more between them. Zhongxian shook his head. Previously, he had indeed been a little hesitant to use forceful measures due to Vice Pavilion Master Tian's appearance. However, when the latter issued an unfair judgment, he recalled the various news he had heard before, and a realization dawned upon him. Even if Vice Pavilion Master Tian chose to side with King Zhongqing due to their prior relationship, the latter's claim isn't entirely unjustified, so it can't be considered collusion, can it? Luo Chichi frowned. Indeed. There isn't sufficient evidence to conclusively prove that Vice Pavilion Master Tian is colluding with King Zhongqing. There are a few things that you are unaware of, and it isn't convenient for me to talk about it for the time being. Don't worry, Wu Shi will deal with the situation once he arrives, Zhongxian replied. On the other hand, seeing how confident Zhongxian was about the matter, Luo Chichi and Yu Fei heaved a sigh of relief. "Young master, I'm done teaching King Zhongqing a lesson." At this moment, Sun Qiong was finally done scattering his chili powder, and he returned with a satisfied look on his face. The previous frustration and indignation he had suffered from the other party's torture had vanished without a trace. Zhongxian swiftly turned around to look at King Zhongqing, only to see the latter breathing feebly, as if he would breathe his last breath at any moment. After a moment of hesitation, Zhongxian eventually stepped forward and retrieved a gourd of fine wine with a flick of his wrist. He tilted the other party's neck upwards and forced the gourd of wine into the other party's mouth. The black-robed young man from before, Butler Qin, was roughly around the same cultivation realm as him, and Mingzhan was only slightly stronger than him, so he could still afford to directly infuse his Heaven's Path Shenqi into their bodies without them noticing. On the other hand, King Zhongqing was a primordial spirit realm pinnacle expert. With the enhanced perception of his primordial spirit, it would not be too difficult for him to notice the presence of the Heaven's Path Shenqi. The Heaven's Path Shenqi was one of his greatest secrets, so it was better to be safe than sorry. Tzzzzzzzz. The wine flowed down King Zhongqing's throat, and it did not take long for the wounds inflicted on the latter by Sun Qiong to vanish without a trace. While Zhongxian's current cultivation was 2 realms lower than King Zhongqing, his Heaven's Path Shenqi was still sufficiently potent to heal the latter's wounds easily. Young master. Seeing Zhongxian heal King Zhongqing, Sun Qiong could not help but sigh in disappointment. If only the young master had told him that they were going to heal the other party, he would have been far more vicious. He would have made many more decisive cuts and scattered more salt and pepper, and the vengeance would have felt far more fulfilling. Noting Sun Qiong's response, Zhongxian shook his head and said, "He can't die now, and there mustn't be any wounds on him either. Otherwise, things might get troublesome." As he spoke, he poured a few more mouthfuls of fine wine down the other party's throat. This time, however, he chose to hide the Heaven's Path Shenqi within the other party's body instead. After he was done, he turned back to Sun Qiong. "What happened? How did you get captured by King Zhongqing's men?" In truth, Zhongxian had been rather perplexed about this matter. In the first place, there should have been many people who went by the name Sun Qiong in the world. If one were to shout the name on the street, many passers-by would surely turn their heads around and respond. Yet, of all the possible people, King Zhongqing had chosen to capture him and even deeply believed that he was the one they were looking for. This. Upon hearing those questions, Sun Qiong scratched his head in embarrassment. Seeing Sun Qiong's reaction, Zhongxian knew that there was more to the matter than there seemed. Frowning, he ordered grimly, "Speak." "Yesterday, I went out to search for good food to eat. I walked into a restaurant, and right after I took a seat, I heard a group just beside me talking discreetly, and I thought that I heard my name." As Sun Qiong spoke, his face grew redder and redder. "Young master, you also know that I'm quite a nosy person. When I heard my name, I went up to them to ask them what they were talking about. They said that they were looking for a person going by the name of Sun Qiong who possesses astounding strength and unparalleled talent, an individual truly favored by the heavens. When I heard that, I naturally thought that the person they had described had an uncanny resemblance with me. Thus, I secretly told them that my name is Sun Qiong, and after that, they knocked me out." Zhongxian was rendered speechless before even hearing the entire explanation. To think that this would be the situation, he had long known what type of person his butler was, but still, this was truly ridiculous. Did he really have to leap at every opportunity to pose? Honestly, from whom did he learn this from? Zhongxian shook his head helplessly. "Geez, he sure is a worrisome fellow. If only he was half as low profile as me. No matter where he went, he would do his best to ensure that he kept a low profile. He would never boast or showcase his capabilities and accomplishments in public, and he would never cause trouble either. If there was a perfect example of a humble man, he would definitely be it. And yet, his butler just had to go around boasting here and there. He could still afford to talk big in smaller places like Tianqian Kingdom, but to actually do it in Qingyuan City, which was filled with countless experts, that was no different from courting death. In a sense, Sun Qiong brought his plight upon himself. Hopefully, he would learn after this incident and not act as recklessly as before. Knowing his own mistakes, Sun Qiong lowered his head apologetically. "Young master, I dare not do so in the future." His young master always managed to pull off his posing, and motivated by the other party's successes, Sun Qiong had long wanted to give it a try himself. When he heard the others showering him with praises, he had thought that his time had come, so he had leaped at the opportunity. And yet, he had ended up being pummeled badly. This sure was stifling. "When we return, you will go into seclusion," Zhongxian ordered. "If you aren't able to reach Saint Realm within 3 months, I'll have you scram." "Yes." Hearing that he had to reach Saint Realm within 3 months, a bitter look surfaced on Sun Qiong's face. Ignoring his conceited and boastful butler, Zhongxian turned his attention back to the battle above him. Young master, that fellow is simply too powerful. I can't defeat him alone. Quick, give me some pointers. By this point, the Golden Origin Cauldron had fallen into a disadvantageous position. The tide of the battle was completely on Vice Pavilion Master Tian's side, and anxious, the cauldron quickly turned to Zhongxian for help. Zhongxian shook his head and said, in a battle, using just brute strength won't work. There's a Ming Men located on the Jianhai acupoint on his waist. Give it a try. Alrighty. Hearing those words, the Golden Origin Cauldron roared excitedly and charged furiously toward Vice Pavilion Master Tian. You! Not expecting the young man below to be able to uncover his flaws so easily, Vice Pavilion Master Tian panicked. He swiftly retreated in fear. Seeing that Vice Pavilion Master Tian was retreating, Zhongxian continued speaking swiftly. Due a constriction in his meridians, when he gathers zhenqi before his chest, there's a moment when the might of his attack will diminish for roughly 0.3 seconds. That is a good opportunity to launch a counterattack against him. As soon as the battle began, Zhongxian had compiled a book on the other party in the Library of Heaven's Path, and when he flipped it open, he found that it was filled with flaws. Of them, the greatest flaw lay in the other party's primordial spirit. In normal circumstances, a half-leaving aperture realm cultivator should have an extraordinarily powerful primordial spirit, but the other party's primordial spirit was filled with flaws. This peculiar situation had left Zhongxian slightly bewildered. However, this was not the time to bother with the matter. What was more important was helping the Golden Origin Cauldron win the battle. Hong Long. With Zhongxian's pointers, Vice Pavilion Master Tian found the tide of the battle swiftly turning against him. In just a few breaths, he had already spurted several mouthfuls of blood, and his expression had turned livid. At this rate, I'll surely lose. The flaws that the other party had pointed out so easily were all fatal weaknesses that could easily cost him his life. In normal circumstances, those flaws should not have been apparent to anyone else. Even true leaving aperture realm experts would have struggled to find them. Yet, Zhongxian was able to list them one after another without any errors. This had truly left him deeply frenzied. This won't do, I have to kill that fellow. Otherwise, the one who will die is me. Clenching his jaws furiously, a hint of callousness flashed through his eyes. With a powerful step, Vice Pavilion Master Tian's body warped into a shadow, bypassing the Golden Origin Cauldron, heading straight for Zhongxian at this moment. Zhongxian was in the midst of speaking to the Golden Origin Cauldron. He had not thought that the other party would go for him so abruptly. Before he could even react, the other party's attack was right before him. Teacher, Zhongsha, young master, everyone's face warped in horror. Chapter 1151. What a huge pit. Everyone anxiously rushed to Zhongxian's side. The haughty young man who seemed to have the entire situation in his grasp a moment ago had already fainted, and a trail of blood was flowing down the edge of his lips. With just a look, it was apparent that he had suffered severe injuries. You bastards, I'll kill you. Luo Chichi and the others roared furiously as they glared at Vice Pavilion Master Tian menacingly, seemingly wanting to devour him whole. Oblivious to their glares, Vice Pavilion Master Tian was completely dumbstruck by the situation. Everything had happened so smoothly that he could hardly believe his eyes. He had confidence in his strength, but judging from how the young man had been able to easily subdue King Zhongqing, the young man should have been able to dodge his attack as well. Because of that, he had prepared many follow-up moves for when his initial assault inevitably failed. Yet, who would have thought that the most troublesome individual would be subdued with a single strike? And more importantly, even though it had happened for a very brief instant, he could have sworn that he saw the other party shifting his body slightly to complement his offense, seemingly fearing that he would miss the attack. To think that an individual would willingly take his palm strike, this was truly. His palm harnessed immense strength that could crush a primordial spirit realm pinnacle expert with ease. Was that not as good as courting death? Just as Vice Pavilion Master Tian was completely bewildered by the situation before him, a loud roar suddenly echoed through the hall. Turning around, he saw the golden soul lock falling from King Zhongqing's body. The countless wounds on his body recovered at a visible rate, and within less than 2 breaths, he had already returned to his peak state, as if the torture he had undergone previously was nothing more than a brief nightmare. When did that fellow obtain such formidable saint medicine? Vice Pavilion Master Tian was rather close with King Zhongqing, but he had never heard that the latter had a medicine that was capable of swiftly healing one's wounds. That was already comparable to the mystical means that Zhongshe had used on Sun Qiong previously. "I'll kill you." Having recovered fully, King Zhongqing swiftly recalled the humiliation he had been put through just a moment ago. With a furious battle cry, he immediately charged toward the unconscious Zhongxian. Along the way, he flicked his wrist and whipped out a sharp sword before brandishing it forcefully toward the latter. In the previous battle, he had been subdued the whole time, depriving him of any opportunity to wield his weapon. Now that he knew how fearsome the enemy was, he knew that hesitation would be his downfall, so he decisively chose to execute his strongest offensive technique right from the very start. Tzzzzzzzz. A surge of sword chi burst across the room with a deafening sonic boom. Before this powerful sword art, even a half-leaving Aperture Realm expert would have to back down temporarily. "Don't you dare hurt him." Luo Chichi, Yu Fei'er, and Sun Qiong raised their weapons simultaneously to protect Zhongxian. Peng! 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 With 3 deep thuds, Zhongxian's 3 allies were sent flying into the wall nearby. Their faces flushed crimson from the impact, and blood spewed wildly from their mouths. The gap between them and a true Saint Fordan expert was simply too huge. They did not stand a chance at all. Die! After knocking the trio back, King Zhongqing continued slashing his blade toward Zhongxian, desiring to slice him in 2. "Hold it right there." At this moment, a furious bellow echoed. Following which, King Zhongqing felt a powerful surge of Zhenqi morphing into a barrier right before Zhongxian, protecting the latter. Despite the incredible might behind his sword, he found that he was unable to break that Zhenqi barrier. Instead, the momentum he wielded in his offense seemed to backfire against him. The sword in his hand bounced back upon striking the barrier, flying back toward him. Puha! Everything happened so fast that King Zhongqing could not even react. Before he knew it, his sword had already pierced his shoulder, and the powerful rebound sent him flying. He crashed into the wall, and the sword in his shoulder ended up lodged in the wall, leaving him hanging in midair like a scarecrow. The excruciating pain caused a roar of agony to escape from King Zhongqing's mouth. Considering that he wielded a sword in hand and he had more than enough time to build up the momentum in his offense to the peak, his attack could be said to have reached the level of half-leaving Aperture Realm experts. On the other hand, the other party had set up the Zhenqi barrier hastily to protect Zhongxian, and yet, the barrier was still strong enough to cause his attack to rebound against him. Just how powerful was the other party? Voila! Before King Zhongqing's horrified gaze, 2 figures appeared before Zhongxian with anxious looks on their faces. Principal Zhong! Principal Zhong! The 2 figures were Elder Wu Rufeng from the Master Teacher Pavilion and Hall Master Xing Tianming from the Combat Master Hall. After taking a closer look, they realized that Zhongxian had already lost consciousness due to how dire his injuries were. With a livid face, Hall Master Xing stood up and roared, "To attempt to murder a master teacher in public, Tianqing, how dare you?" Boom! Enraged, Hall Master Xing flicked his arm furiously. Vice Pavilion Master Tian was about to explain himself, but before he could say a word, he was knocked to the ground by a powerful slap, and huge spurts of blood spewed from his mouth. He had not even been a match for Hall Master Xing when the latter was still at half-leaving Aperture Realm, let alone when the latter had achieved a breakthrough to leaving Aperture Realm. After knocking down Vice Pavilion Master Tian, Hall Master Xing roared, "Men, apprehend those 2 fellows." Hualala! Upon hearing the command, Division Head Liao, Division Head Ju, Division Head Chen, and Division Head Yang rushed out from the shadows, and in the blink of an eye, they had already sealed the cultivation of the duo and captured them. Despite being at Primordial Spirit Realm Pinnacle as well, the same cultivation realm as King Zhongqing, they were combat masters, the representation of the strongest fighting prowess in their cultivation realm. It would be a difficult fight against them even when the duo was in their peak state, let alone their current severely injured states. Principal Zhong! After apprehending the two culprits, Hall Master Xing took out a recovery pill and fed it to Zhongxian. Following which, he used his junqi to help the latter assimilate the medicinal energy within the pill, and only then did the Zhongxian slowly come to. "You are finally here," Zhongxian said faintly with a relieved smile. He weakly turned his gaze toward Vice Pavilion Master Tian and King Zhongqing before continuing. "There might be some kind of misunderstanding between us. I hope that you won't hurt them. Pu." Before Zhongxian could finish his words, more blood spurted from his mouth. Principal Zhong, seeing that the other party was still speaking on the behalf of those two bastards, Wu Shi and Hall Master Xing could not help but feel a little bitter for him. It was those two bastards who had reduced him to his current state, and yet, he was still magnanimously asking for them to be spared. Where else could one find another individual as forgiving as that? He sure was kind to a fault. On the other hand, King Zhongqing and Vice Pavilion Master Tian felt deeply frenzied as they watched the scene unfold before their eyes. It was just a moment ago that Vice Pavilion Master Tian had been wondering why Zhongxian chose to take his attack face on, and it turned out that he was biding his time. Now, the ones who were severely injured were the other party, and when Hall Master Xing and Wu Shi appeared, King Zhongqing even nearly managed to claim Zhongxian's life. How were they supposed to explain themselves in such a situation? Zhongxian was the one who made a move against us. He used that cauldron to. Anxious, Vice Pavilion Master Tian turned around and pointed to where Ding Ding was previously, only to find that the cauldron that had arrogantly been threatening to reduce him to cinders a moment ago had vanished without a trace. The other party had actually managed to stow the cauldron back into his storage ring within the short period of time. "Shut your mouth." Division Head Liao slapped Vice Pavilion Master Tian out of sheer anger, knocking the latter's mouth out of place. Principal Zhong had made such great contributions to their combat master hall, and they had not even managed to show their gratitude to him yet when this fellow suddenly stepped in and reduced their benefactor to such a tragic state. If not for the other party's identity as a master teacher, they would have surely killed him on the spot. Unforgivable. This was truly something unforgivable. Ignoring Vice Pavilion Master Tian, Wu Shi turned to Zhongxian and asked, "Principal Zhong, can you tell us what happened?" "Save them first." Zhongxian weakly raised a finger and pointed toward Luo Chichi and the others. "All right." Hall Master Xing raised a hand, and a division head quickly fed the trio a recovery pill each. Seeing that the three of them were fine, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. He then weakly turned his attention back to Wu Shi and said, "Wu Shi, do you still remember the matter concerning the news of the ancient domain being leaked to the otherworldly demonic tribe? Back then, old Principal Zhong Yinqiu had attempted to report the discovery of the ancient domain to the headquarters, only to have his intelligence covered up by a spy in the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion. After fleeing from the Qiu Wu Palace, the old principal had already explained the matter to them from the start to the end." "Of course." Wu Shi nodded. "I have been looking into the matter since I returned, but I wasn't able to find any conclusive proof. I have been pursuing the matter as well, but in the midst of it, Sun Qiong was suddenly kidnapped by the men of Vice Pavilion Master Tian and King Zhongqing. They accused me of colluding with the Poison Hall and claimed that I am unworthy of being a master teacher. They even said that they wanted to send me into the subterranean gallery to have me make up for my sins." Cough cough. As Zhongxian spoke, he gradually grew more and more agitated before coughing once more. "They accused you of colluding with the Poison Hall and wanted to send you into the subterranean gallery?" Hearing those words, Wu Shi flung his sleeves wrathfully, and coldness surfaced in his eyes. Preposterous. How dare they slander an upright master teacher? Others might have been oblivious to the matter, but he knew full well that the young man before him was not only a celestial master teacher but also a celestial saint. In the entire history of the master teacher continent, there was only one figure who had achieved the same, Kong Shi. To accuse a celestial master teacher of colluding with the Poison Hall and attempt to send him to the subterranean gallery over it. Unpardonable. I refused to acknowledge their accusations, so they decided to force a confession out of me instead. You should also know that I am completely powerless against primordial spirit realm cultivators. It's fortunate that you came quickly, or else we might have lost our lives here, Zhongxian said with a terrified yet relieved look on his face. Vice Pavilion Master Tian and King Zhongqing glanced at one another, and they nearly blew up on the spot. Completely powerless against primordial spirit realm cultivators? You call this being powerless? We were nearly pummeled to death by you. If there's anyone who is powerless here, it should be us, all right. The duo felt so indignant that they could have choked from the sheer frustration they felt. They wanted to refute the other party's words, but the combat masters had already sealed their movements, not allowing them to speak even a single word. On the other hand, Sun Qiong, Luo Chichi, and Yu Fei also exchanged glances, and their mouths twitched uncontrollably from the shamelessness that Zhong Xian was displaying. This was even more so for Yu Fei. She was rendered completely speechless by the sight before her. She had nearly lost her mind when she saw Zhong Xian lying unconscious on the ground after being struck squarely by King Zhongqing, but to think that he was just feigning weakness. With Wu Shi, Hall Master Xing, and many division heads witnessing Vice Pavilion Master Tian and King Zhongqing attempting to murder him, those two would never be able to cleanse their names. Previously, they had been worried about how Zhong Xian would resolve the situation after making a brazen move on the vice head of the Master Teacher Pavilion. Who would have thought that he had already prepared a pit for the duo to fall into? For those who dare to provoke Zhong Xian, they had best be prepared to fall to the lowest point of their life. With such thoughts in mind, the trio could not help but direct looks of sympathy toward Vice Pavilion Master Tian and King Zhongqing. On the other hand, Wu Shi and Hall Master Xing nodded in agreement after hearing Zhong Xian's words. Indeed, I know your strength well. You aren't a match for primordial spirit realm cultivators. Wu Shi had spent a very long time together with Zhong Xian in the Qiu Wu Palace, so he knew the latter's strength very well. It would have been difficult for him to even match a Saint 3 Dan cultivator, so how could he be a match for primordial spirit realm cultivators? As for Hall Master Xing, he had exchanged blows with Zhong Xian back at the Heart Division. While he had been surprised by the incredible reflexes that the latter had displayed during the battle, it had been apparent that the latter was still lacking the strength to stand against a primordial spirit cultivator head-to-head. Not to mention, his opponents were the vice head of the Master Teacher Pavilion and a king who had forged his name on the battlefield. Since Zhong Xian was not a match for them, less had to be said about Luo Chichi and the others. I was truly desperate, so I could only send a message to all of you. After explaining the course of events, Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief before lying on the ground, his breathing still faint from the severe injuries he had incurred. With just a look, it was clear that he had suffered grievous wounds. Even with the supplement of recovery pills, it was unlikely that he would make a full recovery anytime soon. The more Wu Shi thought about it, the more angered he felt. Turning to the duo, he harumphed coldly. On top of slandering a fellow master teacher, you even attempted to force a confession. Tian Qing and King Zhongqing, the both of you sure are brazen. I shall have this matter reported to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters and have them judge it. Vice Pavilion Master Tian and King Zhongqing's faces paled. The pit that they had leaped into seemed to be a little too big in proportion. Slander. Force a confession. Report to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters. Rather than a pit, it seemed like they had leaped into an abyss instead. Chapter 1152. An irrefutable argument. What do you have to say for yourself? Wu Shi bellowed coldly. Woo. Vice Pavilion Master Tian anxiously spoke. Release his seal. Hall Master Xing instructed. Division Head Liao nodded before striking the other party from the back. Vice Pavilion Master Tian immediately felt the surge of zhenqi that had been suppressing his movements being released, and he heaved a sigh of relief. With reddened eyes, he cried, he is lying. He's the one to make a move on us first. Enough. Hearing those words, Hall Master Xing stood up and glared at them sharply. The reason why I allowed you to speak is in view of the fact that you are a master teacher as well. I thought that you would at least repent on what you have done, and yet, all your mouth is capable of spouting is lies and more lies. Tell me, where has your dignity as a master teacher gone to? You said that he made a move on you. Even the strongest of the four of them only has a cultivation of Saint 2 Dan, and you are in King Zhongqing's manor at that. Do you honestly expect anyone to believe those words? Hall Master Xing was so angered that he could explode on the spot. Do you take me as a fool? At least come up with a more believable lie. The both of you are still well and kicking, and you still dared to claim that Principal Zhong made a move on you. Even if Principal Zhong had such intentions in mind, is he even a match for the both of you? Vice Pavilion Master Tian's body staggered in despair. But I am already telling the truth. Look at us, we are injured as well. Vice Pavilion Master Tian felt deeply stifled within, but he knew that the other party had already claimed the upper hand in this debate, and the fact that the other party had witnessed King Zhongqing attempting to kill Zhongxian was truly disadvantageous to them. At this point, vehemently pushing their point forward would only incur the other party's repulse and disgust. Since that was the case, it would be better for them to direct the topic to something else for the time being. That person over there is known as Ming Zhen. Suppressing his indignation, Vice Hall Master Tian pointed to an elder standing by the side and said, "He is the vice head of a poison hall located in Hongyuan Empire. Not too long ago, he arrived at the manor to report Zhongshi's butler, Sun Qiong. He said that Sun Qiong is a particularly powerful poison master, and a while ago, he had arrived at their poison hall to arrange for the founder of the poison hall to be escorted to the headquarters. In view of the safety of Qingyuan Empire, King Zhongqing had no choice but to apprehend Zhongshe to interrogate him. Yet, who could have thought that he would attempt to forcefully take his butler away, thus resulting in this conflict? The vice head of the poison hall? Wu Shi and the others swiftly turned their gazes towards Minute Zhen. On the other hand, noticing so many master teachers and combat masters looking over towards him, Ming Zhen's face was scared pale. "You are from the poison hall?" Wu Shi asked grimly. As a master teacher, he bore little goodwill to those from the poison hall. "That's right." Ming Zhen nodded as he flicked his wrist, taking out his poison master emblem and a token representing his identity as the vice head of the poison hall. After taking a look and confirming that there was no mistake, Wu Shi frowned. "You are here to report Sun Qiong?" He wasn't too familiar with Sun Qiong, but since the latter was Principal Zhong's butler, how could he be a poison master? But of course, there was still a need to clarify things before coming to a conclusion. Ming Zhen's face distorted slightly, and after a long moment of hesitation, Putong. He kneeled to the ground. With reddened eyes, he exclaimed, "Wu Shi, I beg of you to redress the grievances of our poison hall. What happened?" Seeing the other party's abrupt actions, Wu Shi's frown deepened. "King Zhongqing captured all of our comrades from the poison hall and imprisoned them in his underground prison. He coerced me to accuse Zhongshe of that, or else he would kill my brothers. It's also out of desperation that I chose such a course of action. Wu Shi, I implore you to return us justice." Ming Zhen cried in grief. "You! Nonsense! Utter nonsense!" Those words left both Vice Pavilion Master Tian and King Zhongqing exploding on the spot. That fellow was clearly one of their own, and they were still depending on him to serve as their eyewitness, and yet how could he turn against them at this crucial moment? "You said that we coerced you. You were the one who fled here after the poison hall exiled you. Furthermore, you were the one who willingly revealed the location of the poison hall, and that was why King Zhongqing was able to dispatch his soldiers to eradicate them. How in the world did you suddenly become a victim over a blink of an eye, and what did you say? We used the lives of your brothers to threaten you. You were the one who wanted to kill them in the first place. How could we use their lives to threaten you? Shut your mouths." Wu Shi flung his sleeves and bellowed furiously. After which, he turned his gaze back to the poison master and said, "You need not fear, continue speaking. Yes. If Wu Shi doubts my word, you can search King Zhongqing's underground prison. My brothers from the poison hall is currently being imprisoned there. If you were to find any falsehood in my words, I'm willing to accept any punishment." Ming Zhen cowered backward slightly, but the resolution in his eyes was apparent. It was as if he was deeply fearful, but for the sake of justice, he was willing to take a leap of faith and testify against the true masterminds. His body was still plagued with the other party's poison, so he knew what he should say and what he shouldn't. Furthermore, at this point, it was apparent that King Zhongqing and Vice Pavilion Master Tian was no match against Zhongshe in terms of playing such trickery. Clearly, this was the best opportunity for him to leap out of the darkness and return to the light. "You! The words spoken and the subtle gestures that hinted at a mix of fear and courage from Mingzhen left Vice Pavilion Master Tian and King Zhongqing so enraged that flames could erupt from their heads. If Mingzhen had chosen to side with them, they would have been able to turn the tables on the other party. Yet, who could have thought that the latter's words would become the nail that sealed the lid of their coffin instead? On the other hand, Luo Chichi, Sun Qiong, and Yu Fei glanced at one another with their eyes widened and mouth agape in disbelief. There was only a brief exchange between Zhong Shi and that ex-vice head of the Poison Hall, and yet, he actually managed to convince the latter to side with them and speak completely different words from before. This was too formidable. With this, no matter which perspective they looked at the situation for, they were in an absolutely advantageous position. Even though Zhong Xian was the one who had insulted a 7-star master teacher despite possessing only the identity of a 6-star master teacher, flouting the rules of formalities, at some point in time, the story had turned into the latter abusing his seniority to take advantage of Zhong Xian, intentionally attempting to accuse him of something he hadn't done. At this point in time, the duo would never be able to cleanse their reputation anymore. Head to the underground prison to take a look. Check if there are any poison masters there. Ignoring the despairing duo, Wu Shi turned to a master teacher beside him and instructed. In this rescue operation, the Combat Master Hall wasn't the only one that had dispatched their forces. The Master Teacher Pavilion had also brought many master teachers over as well. When Wu Shi received Zhong Xian's distress call on his Jade communication token, he immediately brought everyone that he could call upon in the Master Teacher Pavilion over, not daring to hesitate in the least. Yes. The Master Teacher quickly turned around and left. Not too long later, the Master Teacher returned and clasped his fist, reporting to Wu Shi and Hall Master Xing, in the underground prison of King Zhongqing Manor, there are indeed many captured poison masters, and every single one of them are severely injured. As I expected. Upon hearing that report, Wu Shi's face turned incredibly awful. He turned around to look at Vice Pavilion Master Tian and sneered, to use the members of the Poison Hall to slander Principal Zhong. Vice Pavilion Master Tian, you can be assured that I'll report this matter in detail to the headquarter. Every single clue fitted together with pieces on the puzzle, forming a flawless story. At this point, there was no longer any need to listen to their explanation anymore. With the advancement of his cultivation to half-leaving Aperture Realm, as well as the merit he had accrued from exploring the Qiu Wu Palace, he was swiftly promoted to become the other vice head of the Master Teacher Pavilion, putting him on equal standing as Vice Pavilion Master Tian. In terms of actual authority and influence, he was still beneath that of Vice Pavilion Master Tian, but considering that the latter had done something as immoral as this, he still held every right to investigate the matter. Vice Pavilion Master Tian glared at Zhong Xian hatefully, but at this point, he knew that there was nothing he could say that would change the situation anymore. He thought that it would be easier for them to deal with the latter by pinning a crime on him. This way, the matter wouldn't come back to bite them in the future, but who could have thought that the other party would actually use it against them? It must be said that Zhong Xian's adaptability was truly formidable. In just a short moment that they had let their guards down, they ended up falling for his trap. I hope to have Pavilion Master go deal with this matter personally. If the results then are still the same as what you have concluded here, I would have nothing to say about reporting this matter to the headquarters. Vice Pavilion Master Tian gritted his teeth and said. He could tell that Wu Shi and Hall Master Xing had a deep relationship with Zhong Xian. At this rate, there was no way he would be able to cleanse himself of his suspicions. Just the very act of slandering and accusing another master teacher was more than sufficient for him to lose his current position. Perhaps, he might even be stripped of his master teacher license. At this rate, he could only bank his hopes on Pavilion Master Go. With his involvement, perhaps there might still be hopes for a reversal. You want to have Pavilion Master Go to investigate this matter? Let me tell you this then. Your direct disciple has duped the intelligence regarding the existence of the ancient domain from the old principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy, Zhong Yinqiu, 2 years back and relayed the intelligence to the otherworldly demonic tribe, nearly causing a calamity to occur. I have already looked into this matter, confirmed it, and reported it to Pavilion Master Go. And now, you are intentionally slandering and accusing Principal Zhong. Even if you were to bring him in, nothing will change. Wu Shi harumphed coldly. Vice Pavilion Master Tian's face paled. The reason why old Principal Zhong Yinqiu and the others were hesitant to liaise with the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion after they were duped of their intelligence was because the person who had duped their intelligence had an exceptionally high standing, and he was the direct disciple of Vice Pavilion Master Tian. After Wu Shi returned, he had been looking into the case carefully, and he found concrete evidence to formally charge Vice Pavilion Master Tian's direct disciple of the matter. It was also due to this matter that Zhong Xian dared to make a move. In the first place, Vice Pavilion Master Tian was already under investigation, and yet, the other party still dared to make a move against him. Since that was the case, he didn't mind pinning another accusation on him. And besides, even though it was more of a gut feeling at this point, there were quite a handful of doubtful points about Vice Pavilion Master Tian himself back in the short interaction they had earlier as well. Men, bring Vice Pavilion Master Tian and King Zhongqing back to the Master Teacher Pavilion, Wu Shi instructed. Typically speaking, the Master Teacher Pavilion wouldn't deal with the local officials easily. After all, such actions could easily result in dissension between the royal family and the Master Teacher Pavilion. However, the King Zhongqing's attempt to slander and accuse a Master Teacher of a crime had truly touched the bottom line of the Master Teacher Pavilion. This was an insult to the dignity of the #1 occupation in the world, so he had to be dealt with. Otherwise, if everyone were to regard master teachers as pushovers, how were they to maintain order in the world? Master teachers mustn't be sullied, these weren't just mere words. Those who tried to climb over the head of the Master Teacher Pavilion would have to pay a corresponding price for their actions. Yes. The master teachers stepped forward and took the two men from the hands of Division Head Liao and the others before leaving the hall. After the duo was brought away, Wu Shi turned to Zhong Xian and asked worriedly, "Principal Zhong, are you still all right?" "I'm fine." Zhong Xian shook his head. With Luo Chich's support, he stood up and bowed apologetically. "Even though Vice Pavilion Master Tian was the first to make a move against me, it is a fact that I did retaliate against him, and that's against the formalities of the way of teacher. In order to make up for my mistakes, I have decided to crash the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion after I recover from my injuries. I hope that you can pardon me for this." "You want to crash our Master Teacher Pavilion?" Veins immediately popped up on Wu Shi's forehead. "If you're worrying about that matter, there's really no need to. Your actions constitute a self-defense, so there's no one who would say a thing about that matter. I'll also report this matter to the headquarters, so that no one will be able to use this matter against you in the future. If a master teacher were to truly err, there was only one way he could cleanse his crimes: pavilion crashing. Back then, in order to avenge Lu Chong, Zhong Xian had single-handedly challenged Shenyuan Empire, and in the midst of doing so, he had no choice but to fight against the head of the regional Master Teacher Pavilion as well. That was against the formalities of the way of teacher, and that was also why he had to crash the Master Teacher Pavilion afterwards in order to cleanse his name. Pavilion crashing was the act of single-handedly challenging the trials set up by the Master Teacher Pavilion. It was equivalent to using the strength and wits of an individual to go against an entire Master Teacher Pavilion, and it was nigh impossible to succeed. For this reason, there were only a small handful of people who had succeeded in pavilion crashing in the entire history of the Master Teacher Pavilion. However, while that rule may apply to others, when Wu Shi recalled the identity and incredible means of the young man before him, he dared not agree to it. Back in the Qiu Wu Palace, even he had willingly chosen to abide by the other party arrangement. Regardless from which aspect one was looking at, the young man before him was truly incredible. As formidable as the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion may be, Wu Shi had no confidence whether it would be able to remain standing after the latter had made his round on it. Furthermore, once the pavilion crashing succeeded, they would have to heed the other parties unconditionally, and that would be a true embarrassment to their Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion. Since Wu Shi has said such words, I'm reassured. Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief. After which, he turned to Hall Master Xing and asked, "It's due to me that the members of the Poison Hall are implicated into this matter. May I trouble Hall Master Xing to take them back to the Combat Master Hall to take care of them for the time being?" "You want me to take them back to the Combat Master Hall?" Hall Master Xing was taken aback. Indeed. While poison masters have a poor reputation, If we could bring them over to our side as allies, that would surely be a great boost to our fighting forces. Without a doubt, they would prove to be a sharp edge in dealing against the otherworldly demonic tribe. Thus, if possible, I hope to have them join the Combat Master Hall and form a division of their own. Zhong Xian revealed his true intentions. Chapter 1153. Meeting Elder Shu once more. While he was not the one who had orchestrated the incident, it was partly due to him that the Poison Hall had ended up in its current state. If they were handed over to the Master Teacher Pavilion, many self-righteous individuals would surely speak up against them, and it was hard to say what kind of fate would befall them in the future. However, if they were to be taken to the Combat Master Hall instead, the situation would be entirely different. Not only would the Poison Masters be able to resolve their current crisis, they would also be given a new identity that would allow them to walk in the open. Just based on these two benefits alone, the Poison Masters would not reject his proposal. Additionally, if the Combat Master Hall could capitalize on the strength of the Poison Masters, their overall prowess would surely increase by leaps and bounds. That won't do. Hall Master Xing's face twitched, and he hurriedly waved his hands to reject the suggestion. Why not? Zhong Xian asked with a frown. As you know, Poison Masters are used to living carefree lives. I fear that it would be difficult for our Combat Master Hall to control them. Furthermore, as you know, the cultivation techniques that they practice are unorthodox and depraved. Master teachers look down upon this. Hall Master Xing shook his head. No matter what, the Combat Master Hall is still a branch of the Master Teacher Pavilion. In order to raise their cultivation, Poison Masters reared poisonous bugs, consumed lethal poison, and even used their life force to cultivate GU. Most of their means had already breached the moral code of the Master Teachers. Combat Masters were a type of Master Teacher, so if they were to accept the Poison Masters, how would their peers view them in the future? Combat Masters did strive to obtain greater strength, but the means by which they did so were important as well. They had principles to follow, so they could not simply go around accepting everyone. That's simple. I'll teach them a new cultivation technique that is orthodox and upright. On top of that, I'll instruct them to heed Hall Master Xing's words, so you need not worry about being unable to control them, Zhong Xian said. It was indeed true that the horrific practices common in the cultivation of poison arts were unacceptable to the masses, but this was not a matter that was too difficult to resolve. As long as he imparted his simplified Heaven's Path poison art to them, not only would they be able to advance their cultivation swiftly, there would also be no need for them to resort to unorthodox means anymore. This. Hall Master Xing contemplated over the issue. It might have felt as if the young man before him was making light of the matter, but having seen the other party's capability in person, he had absolute trust that the other party would be able to pull it off. A person whose understanding of battle techniques was so deep that he could master a Saint low-tier battle technique to consummation 11 breaths after first looking at the manual might really be able to alter poison cultivation techniques to make them orthodox. If the person before him could resolve those two problems, accepting the Poison Masters into the Combat Master Hall was something that he could consider. After all, it was indeed the truth that the addition of Poison Masters to their ranks would bolster their forces considerably. Putting everything aside, it was precisely due to the usage of poison that King Zhongqing had been able to rise to his current rank within a short 20 years. At this point, Wu Shi suddenly interjected. While Poison Masters have a poor reputation, the fact that the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters have never ordered their elimination shows that there's a purpose to the existence of the Poison Master occupation and that they are willing to give the Poison Hall a chance. If Principal Zhong really has a way to convince the Poison Masters to work for the welfare of mankind, I'll report this matter to the headquarters and convince them of this matter. I believe that they would be glad to see this as well. Poison Masters were the worst enemies to make, and at the same time, they were also the most reliable allies to have. Their capability in group battles was nothing short of phenomenal. If they could assist in the fight against the otherworldly demonic tribe, mankind would stand a far better chance. While the Poison Hall headquarters were well concealed, the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters was bound to know where it was. Yet, over numerous millenniums, they still had not taken action against them as they did for the Soul Oracles. This was more than sufficient to show that they were not unpardonable. Furthermore, these poison masters that were currently locked in the King Zhongqing Manor's underground prison had grown up on the island just beside Jingyuan City, and they had rarely ventured out of the island. They might have been poison masters, but they had never harmed anyone. Since they had never harmed anyone or committed any evil deeds, would it not be a little presumptuous of them to kill them just because of their occupation? If so, what would become of the values that master teachers preached? All right. Hearing Wu Shi agree to the matter, Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief. While Hall Master Xing's cultivation was higher than Wu Shi's, in terms of standing, the latter was still a notch higher. Since Wu Shi had said such words, he must have had a feasible plan in mind to carry out the matter. Please wait here for a moment. I'll head to the underground prison to talk with the poison masters and see if I'm be able to convince them. If it does not work out, we'll just have to find some other way to deal with them, Zhong Xian said. But Principal Zhong, what about your wounds? Wu Shi asked worriedly. Don't worry. With my constitution and your recovery pill, I'm fine now. It won't impede me from talking with them. Zhong Xian waved his hand with a smile. Recalling the various incredible means that the young man possessed, Wu Shi knew that while the injuries the other party had sustained were considerable, they would not pose much of a problem for him. Thus, heaving a sigh of relief, he continued. That's a relief. However, poison masters are known to be rather scheming, so allow me to follow you to the underground prison. This way, I'll be able to protect you if anything happens. It's fine. Given your current standing and identity, I fear that your presence will be pressurizing to them. It'll do for me to face them alone. Zhong Xian turned down Wu Shi's goodwill. If he wanted to convince Xu Yu and the others to obediently join the Combat Master Hall and obey their words, he would surely have to reveal his identity as Sun Qiong to them. Naturally, this mustn't be done before Wu Shi, or else the latter would learn about his identity as a poison master. Wu Shi hesitated for a brief moment before nodding. All right then, I won't enter the underground prison with you. However, we will be waiting outside, and once we notice that something is amiss, we'll immediately barge in and make a move. I'll be relying on the both of you then, Zhong Xian replied with a smile, knowing that the duo was worried about him. Led by the master teacher from before, it did not take long for the crowd to arrive at the entrance of the underground prison. Wu Shi and Hall Master Xing stood guard outside while Zhong Xian entered the underground prison alone. The prison was dimly lit and eerie. There were all sorts of powerful formations set up here and there to prevent the escape of the imprisoned cultivators. Shortly after walking in, Zhong Xian's bones and muscles began rearranging themselves to assume the appearance of Sun Qiong. Elder Shu. Very soon, Zhong Xian found Elder Shu, and just as the master teacher had said, it seemed like he had been subjected to harsh torture. He was clearly much skinnier than he had been 2 months prior, and his aura felt withered as well. With just a look, it was apparent that his wounds were not light. There were roughly 100 other poison masters captured in the underground prison. As for the other members of the poison hall, it was hard to say whether they were alive or dead. Founder. Upon seeing Zhong Xian, Elder Shu and the others were stunned for a moment before agitation struck them. The identity of the middle-aged man before them, Sun Qiong, had been verified by Poison Master Hai and Poison Master Bai of the headquarters. Thus, they had no doubts about his identity at all. I am not your founder, just a person who escorted her back then. It'll do for you to just address me as Sun Qiong, Zhong Xian replied with a smile. You have truly suffered a lot. Here are some pills to heal your injuries. Quickly swallow them to regain some strength. He flicked his wrist and took out a couple of jade bottles before passing them around the poison masters. He had plenty of pills from acquiring the storage rings of the 10 kings of the Qingtian lineage. As long as he infused some Heaven's Path Zhenqi into each of the pills, it would grant them miraculous effects in recovering wounds and fatigue. Yes. Without any hesitation, Elder Shu and the others took the pills and swallowed them. As soon as the pill dissolved in their mouth, the Heaven's Path Zhenqi contained within them swiftly flowed through their bloodstream to the rest of their body, and their wounds began healing at a discernible rate. Noticing the changes in their bodies, Xu Yu and the others were startled. They could hardly believe what was going on. The effectiveness of these pills was far far more potent than the recovery pills that they concocted. As expected of the individual who had escorted the founder, without a doubt, the other party must have inherited the founder's heritage. After the poison masters had somewhat recuperated from their wounds, Zhongxian asked grimly, "What happened to the Jingyuan City Poison Hall?" The Poison Hall. At this point, Xu Yu's eyes reddened in deep indignation. His voice grew slightly hoarse, as if there was something stuck within it. "Has been destroyed. We are the only ones who remain. Everyone else has been killed." As the ex-vice head of the Poison Hall, Ming Zhen knew all the secrets of the Poison Hall, and this included the flaws in their formations and defensive systems as well. Under his lead, King Zhongqing's forces had been able to sneak into the Poison Hall successfully without alarming anyone, taking the Poison Hall off guard. As a result, the Poison Hall was completely wiped out in the tragedy. Killed? You are saying that King Zhongqing killed everyone in the Poison Hall? Zhongxian's face turned completely dark. He had thought that it would at least have been a roughly equal fight, with both sides suffering some casualties. Yet, from the looks of it, the situation seemed far worse than he had imagined. That's right. They attacked in the middle of the night. Caught off guard, we were swiftly encircled and subdued. That night, a river of blood flowed through the Poison Hall. Just like that, the 10,000 years of heritage of the Poison Hall was destroyed. Elder Xu clenched his fists tightly, and his voice gradually grew more and more agitated. Eventually, it came to a point where he found himself unable to continue speaking anymore. Zhongxian was at a loss for words. He had no idea how he should comfort Elder Xu's pain. He had been to the Poison Hall as well, and on top of poison masters, there were many ordinary civilians. These civilians did not possess the talent for cultivating poison arts, so they spent their lives idly on the island. Who knew that they were not spared either? The fear of poison masters was not completely unfounded, but these poison masters had spent the entirety of their lives on a remote island, isolated from the rest of their world. They had never ventured beyond their island to harm anyone, but King Zhongqing had callously stepped in and ruined the relatively peaceful world that they had constructed for themselves. Initially, Zhongxian had wondered if he had gone too far by scheming against King Zhongqing in such a manner, but from the looks of it now, he regretted not doing worse. A person like him deserved to die 1,000 times over. After taking a deep breath, Elder Xu continued. After King Zhongqing massacred the entire Poison Hall, he rounded up all the poison masters ranked 5-star and above, sealed our cultivation, and imprisoned us here. Every single day, he would use cruel torture techniques on us to have us mass concoct poison for him. When he spoke of King Zhongqing, flames of fury burned in his eyes. If he could, there was no doubt that he would have ripped the other party in two without any hesitation. Mass concoct poison? Zhongxian knitted his eyebrows. What kind of poison is he concocting? In the Qingyuan Empire, King Zhongqing was definitely a figure worthy of the phrase beneath a single man, above the masses one. Putting aside the incredible cultivation he possessed, he also wielded unbounded authority as well. If a person who wielded that much power wanted to deal with his political rivals, there was no need for him to go through the trouble of mass concocting poison at all. Or to put it in simpler terms, King Zhongqing was up to something huge. It's the scattering breeze powder, Elder Xu replied. Grade 5 poison, scattering breeze powder? Zhongxian frowned. Colorless and odorless, it is a poison that saps one of one's strength upon inhalation, rendering one powerless for a short period of time. However, its ability to drift freely along with the breeze allows it to incapacitate a huge number of people simultaneously, though it is only effective on those beneath Saint Realm. How much of it did King Zhongqing demand? All in all, the scattering breeze powder could not be considered a lethal poison, but its ability to spread far and wide made it extremely difficult to guard against. 10 tons, Elder Xu replied grimly. 10 tons? Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up. Just an ordinary jade bottle of scattering breeze powder released into the air could knock out several hundred individuals. To produce 10 tons of it. Was he planning to knock out an entire city? What the heck did he need so much of it for? Noticing Zhongxian's worry, Xu Yu swiftly explained, "He's the sworn enemy of our Poison Hall, so how could we possibly serve him? Thus, We refused to obey his orders. At the same time, realization suddenly struck him, and he looked at Zhongxian with a peculiar gaze. Fu! Elder Sun Qiong, how did you know that we are here? You weren't noticed by the guards when you came here, right? Even though Zhongxian's sudden arrival in the underground prison was perplexing to him, Elder Shu's trust in the other party remained unwavering, simply on the grounds that he was the man chosen by the founder. As a poison master who had grown up in the poison hall, it was inevitable that he would have blind faith in the founder. Nevertheless, he was still worried about the other party. Their deaths were nothing much, but if they were to implicate Elder Sun Qiong in this matter, they would have truly let the founder down. Don't worry, I have already subdued King Zhongqing, and he has been taken away by the Master Teacher Pavilion for interrogation. The reason I am here is to save you all. Zhongxian replied. You have subdued King Zhongqing? You are here to save us. The crowd stared at one another with shock gazes, not daring to believe what they had just heard. Chapter 1154, Wu Shi's Analysis Combat Master. The many poison masters stared at one another, unable to process what they had just heard. That's right. As long as you all become combat masters, you will be able to walk through the streets of Qingyuan City openly without fear, and you wouldn't have to fear anyone confronting you or causing you any trouble just because you practice poison arts. And more importantly, you need not fear the Master Teacher Pavilion anymore, Zhongxian said with a light chuckle. Hearing those words, the faces of the poison masters reddened, and they clenched their fists in agitation. As poison masters, they had lived in the shadows for far too long. For the longest time, their greatest wish had been to stand in the light as themselves without being snubbed or shunned by others. If Elder Sun Qiong could really make this come true for them, that would be as good as granting them a second life. But we aren't master teachers. Are we truly qualified to become combat masters? Will the other combat masters really welcome us into their ranks? After all, we are poison masters. Elder Shu asked apprehensively. The other poison masters nodded in agreement as well, clearly harboring the same concerns. The Combat Master Hall was a subsidiary of the Master Teacher Pavilion, and typically speaking, combat masters were talented individuals chosen amongst the master teachers. On the other hand, they were only a bunch of poison masters. It's true that most combat masters are master teachers as well, but from time to time, the Combat Master Hall would also recruit talents of other fields into their ranks to widen their scope. While we poison masters have a bad reputation, our fighting prowess with poison is exceptional too. The Combat Master Hall would surely welcome you into their ranks gladly. As long as you were to join the Combat Master Hall as one of their members, even if just as a reserve member, under their cover, no one would dare to say the slightest thing about you. Zhongxian nodded with a smile. The Combat Master Hall did have special rules when it came to recruiting top-notch talent, but those only applied to talents of around Zhengyang's caliber. To be honest, Elder Shu and the others were still quite lacking. Nevertheless, even if they couldn't become an official member of the Combat Master Hall, becoming a reserve member was still possible. It wouldn't be too late for them to apply to become an official member once they achieve some merit. That would truly be for the best. However, would our cultivation technique and means be rejected by the master teachers? They might accept us at the start, but as time passes, would they start to repulse and shun us? Elder Shu asked in concern. I understand your concerns, but don't worry, the founder has already made preparations for this. Here are some cultivation technique manuals which the founder has prepared for you all. As long as you all were to cultivate accordingly to it, not only will the rate of advancement in your cultivation be faster than ever, you won't have to resort to unorthodox means anymore too. Zhongxian said as he flicked his wrist and passed a few manuals over. Those manuals contained the simplified versions of the Heaven's Path poison art. Back then, he had written them down shortly after browsing through the books of the Poison Hall in hopes that he would be able to impart them to those of the Poison Hall. Elder Shu and the others took the books doubtfully, but after flipping through a few pages, their faces swiftly flushed in agitation, and their breathing couldn't help but hasten. Every single one of them here had at least devoted 100 years of their life into the study of poison, so their eye of discernment in the field of poison was superb. The poison cultivation technique manuals Elder Sun Qiong had passed to them weren't too thick, and the words on them numbered fewer than a typical manual as well. Yet, every single word written on them was deeply meaningful, directing them towards the very essence of poison art itself. If they were to cultivate according to it, it could be foreseen that both their mastery of poison and cultivation would swiftly improve, granting them far greater prowess than before. Even without achieving a breakthrough, their fighting prowess would soar by at least 2 or 3 times easily. Thank you, Founder, for bestowing us with these cultivation techniques. Agitated, the poison masters began kneeling on the floor and kowtowing deeply to Elder Sun Qiong. With these cultivation techniques, they would no longer have to go through the trouble to search for all kinds of venomous worms and lethal poison, or even commit depraved acts against their conscience. It's out of the kindness of Hall Master Xing's heart that you all are allowed to join the Combat Master Hall, so I hope that you will heed his commands in the future. Don't let your emotions get the better of you when it comes to dealing with official matters, or else, even I won't be able to save you, Zhong Xian said with a stern expression on his face. Yes. The crowd nodded. As formidable as poison masters were in group battles, they were still insufficient to go up against the powerful combat masters. Not only did combat masters wield extraordinary fighting prowess, more importantly, they had also tempered their physical bodies in many ways, granting them considerably immunity to most forces of nature, and this included poison as well. If a poison master were to face a combat master of the same cultivation realm, it was likely that the poison master would be killed even before he had a chance to utilize his poison. Even if the poison master were to set up a trap in advance, it was also likely that the combat master would be able to push himself to slay the poison master before succumbing to the poison. All right. After memorizing the content on the manuals, burn them. I'm sure that you understand the significance of these cultivation techniques, so I hope that they won't be passed them down to anyone else without my permission. Zhong Xian instructed. Yes. The crowd nodded. Even though it was just a simplified version of the Heaven's Path poison art, it was still an astounding power to behold. While Zhong Xian was still busy convincing the poison masters, Hall Master Xing and Wu Shi were standing outside the underground prison. Wu Shi, how do you intend to account the matter of the Combat Master Hall accepting the poison masters to the Master Teacher Pavilion? Hall Master Xing asked with a frown. He had never intended to accept the request, but since Wu Shi had spoken up in the stead of the poison masters, he eventually relented. While his fighting prowess far surpassed the other party, admittedly, his ability to assess situations was still lacking as compared to the latter. After all, their responsibilities differed significantly from one another. As the head of the Combat Master Hall, his responsibility lay in training combat masters and preparing them for war, whereas Wu Shi, as the vice head of the Master Teacher Pavilion, was in charge of maintaining the regional security and order. And for that purpose, Wu Shi had to be keen in assessing situations. Do you feel that Principal Zhong is bringing trouble to your Combat Master Hall? Hearing Hall Master Xing's question, Wu Shi shook his head and turned to him. This. Having his thoughts pointed out so directly, Hall Master Xing couldn't help but shake his head awkwardly. Those were indeed his thoughts. Poison masters were known to be an individualistic and eccentric bunch, and it went without saying that it wouldn't be easy to manage such a group. If they were to join the Combat Master Hall, wouldn't it just erode the order he had established with great difficulty in the Combat Master Hall? It looks like you didn't understand Principal Zhong's true intentions. He's doing this for the sake of the Combat Master Hall and mankind. Wu Shi shook his head and sighed deeply. He's doing this for the sake of the Combat Master Hall and mankind? A confused expression surfaced on Hall Master Xing's face. Wu Shi's words were too deep for him to comprehend. Those fellows were nothing but a huge trouble, so how could this be for the welfare of the Combat Master Hall? Hi, I knew that you wouldn't understand. A helpless smile flashed across Wu Shi's face as he looked meaningfully into the distance, reminiscent of a wise elder who had seen through the world. Let me ask you this then. How do you intend to deal with those poison masters? Will you imprison them, or will you kill them? This. Hall Master Xing was caught off guard by the question. He had to take a moment to contemplate over the matter before he was able to respond. Those poison masters haven't erred or harmed anyone, so why do we have to imprison or kill them? The Master-Teacher Pavilion aimed to lead mankind through virtue, not through tyranny. Naturally, they couldn't just punish an innocent bunch just because of their affiliation to the Poison Hall. Not to mention, in the very first place, the Poison Masters were the victims of this incident as well. Given such, how could they possibly still harden their hearts to imprison or kill them? That would truly be going against their conscience. Indeed. We can't imprison or kill them. But their Poison Hall branch has been exposed and destroyed, so they can't return to it anymore. Are you certain that it would be safe to have so many powerful Poison Masters scattered throughout Qingyuan Empire? Wu Shi asked. This Hall Master Xing fell silent at those words. It was easy to deal with the Poison Masters when they were gathered together as a group, but once they were to disperse and blend in with the countless civilians of Qingyuan Empire, it would be nigh impossible to find them anymore. If those Poison Masters were to choose to harm others, their incredible mastery in poison would make it extremely difficult to trace the case to them. And even if they were to find the murderer later on, many lives would have already been lost then. If we could bring them into the Combat Master Hall, that would be effectively limiting their area of activity and preventing a catastrophe from happening. In essence, this is similar to a house arrest, but with a much better sounding name. Not only is it not detrimental to our reputation, it'll also display the magnanimity of the Master-Teacher Pavilion. Truly two birds with a stone. This Hall Master Xing widened his eyes in astonishment, unable to speak a word. Upon hearing the other party's analysis, he realized that that was indeed the case. If the Poison Masters were to join the Combat Master Hall, they would be bound by its rules as well. Naturally, they wouldn't be able to maintain the carefree lifestyle that they had previously. That would effectively limit their area of activity to Qingyuan City, thus preventing them from committing any harm out there. This is only the first aim behind Principal Zhong's suggestion. As for the second, I can tell you with certainty that he's doing it with the welfare of your Combat Master Hall in mind, Wu Shi said. You should still remember the fight against the otherworldly demonic tribe 20 years ago, right? Of course, Hall Master Xing replied gravely. Back then, the Qingtian lineage had dispatched all of their forces to encircle the Combat Master Hall, and a bitter fight ensued. The Combat Master Hall had suffered great casualties in that battle, and even Hall Master Xing himself had nearly lost his life. If not for Elder Qi, he wouldn't have been around anymore. Even though the otherworldly demons sprung a surprise attack, their forces were still insufficient to deal with the powerful forces of the Combat Master Hall. Yet, the Combat Master Hall still ended up being nearly forced into a corner. The reason for it should still be fresh in your mind. Recalling the tragedy back then, Wu Shi's face turned grim as well. The otherworldly demons had come prepared, but the defense's Combat Master Hall had never fallen lax. They were well prepared to face the otherworldly demons, and under normal circumstances, even if the otherworldly demons had dispatched all of their elites into the assault, with the incredible might wielded by the Combat Masters, the battle should have still ended in an easy victory for the Combat Masters. There wasn't even any need for the Master-Teacher Pavilion and the Qingyuan Empire's military to come into the picture. And yet, despite the three powers making a move, the outcome was still a narrow and tragic victory. It was due to that battle that Qingyuan Empire declined to become the weakest one of the 8 great conferred empire. Even 20 years weren't sufficient for it to recover from the impact back then. It's due to the supreme scattering breeze powder. Hall Master Xing clenched his fists tightly together. Back then, their combat masters were unknowingly afflicted with a potent poison known as the supreme scattering breeze powder, and the poison depleted their combat masters of their fighting prowess. This opened up a huge opening for the otherworldly demons to strike. Even he wasn't spared from the effects of the supreme scattering breeze powder. This matter had been a huge thorn in his heart, and even the passing of 20 years wasn't sufficient for him to let go of it. Indeed, that poison drifted with the wind, and odorless and colorless, it was inevitable that no one noticed a thing. Even I hadn't expected them to have such a hand either. It was thanks to the keen-eyed Vice Pavilion Master Tian noticing it that the losses of the Master-Teacher Pavilion were minimized. Due to that matter, he gained great prestige in the Master-Teacher Pavilion and soared through the ranks. Wu Shi nodded. It's probably due to the matter that Principal Zhong wishes to bring the Poison Masters into the Combat Master Hall. Firstly, with the sharp senses of the Poison Masters to poison, they would be able to uncover any poison used by the enemy ahead of time, thus preventing such tragedy from happening again. Secondly, the creation of a poison division could also serve to further temper the Combat Master's immunity to poison. This way, even if the otherworldly demons were to resort to the same means once more, the Combat Master Hall wouldn't be as helpless as it was back then. This Hall Master Xing was taken aback. Indeed. With the inclusion of Poison Masters into their ranks, even if they were to encounter the same matter as they did 20 years ago, they wouldn't be as powerless as they were back then. Hall Master Xing contemplated for a while, and the more he thought about it, the more convinced he was that there was no drawback from bringing the Poison Masters into the Combat Master Hall. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, he turned to Wu Shi, and it took him a brief moment of hesitation before he could bring himself to ask, did Principal Zhong really see this far ahead? These were all factors that he had never considered before. Despite the other party's severely injured state, he still managed to analyze so deeply into this matter. Was this for real? Principal Zhong's wisdom is not something the likes of us can fathom. It also took me a long moment of contemplation after hearing his request before realization struck me. Wu Shi replied meaningfully. Initially, he also didn't think that the matter was really feasible either. However, when he tried to analyze deeper into the matter, he astonishingly realized that the potential benefits severely outweighed the drawbacks. This was truly a decision that only those of great wisdom would be able to come up with. This Hall Master Xing ran through the situation in his head once more, and his admiration for Principal Zhong couldn't help but deepen further. Impressed, he remarked, Principal Zhong is truly a living sage. Chapter 1155, I like you, elder son, we have memorized the cultivation technique you have imparted to us. An hour later, Elder Shu clasped his fist and reported to Zhong Xian. Destroy those books then. Zhong Xian replied with a wave of his hand. Elder Shu and the others nodded, and with a powerful flick, the secret manuals disintegrated to ashes before scattering into the surroundings, as if they hadn't appeared in the first place. Elder son, where can we find you in the future? We wish to repay the favor to you. Knowing that it was only a matter of time before the envoy of the founder would have to leave, Elder Shu couldn't help but ask. The other party had granted them a second life, and no words could possibly be sufficient to express the gratitude they felt towards him. Where to find me? Zhong Xian shook his head. There's no need for you to seek me. If I have any matter that I require your help for, I'll come and find you. Then, Elder Shu hesitated for a moment before asking, may we have the honor of knowing Elder Son's true identity? This way, if you have any instructions for us in the future, even if you aren't able to meet us in person, you can simply send a messenger to us, and we'll brave through even the flames of hell for you. This. Zhong Xian was intending to refuse that request of theirs as well, but looking into the expectant eyes of the Poison Masters before him, he found himself hesitating for a brief moment before eventually relenting. All right then. Actually, my true identity is the principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy, Zhong Xian's butler. However, I am a very low-profile person, so I hope that you can keep this matter a secret. Principal Zhong's butler? I have heard of Principal Zhong. He's famed to be a once-in-thousand-years prodigy, and despite his young age, he was unanimously nominated to become the principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. So you're Principal Zhong's butler. Understood. Senior son, rest assured. We will never speak a word of this matter to another soul. Upon learning of Zhong Xian's true identity, the Poison Masters quickly nodded their heads excitedly. All right, let's leave the underground prison, Zhong Xian said with a wave of his hand. Nodding, Elder Shu and the others began walking out of the door. After confirming that they had all left, Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief. He reverted back to his original appearance before slowly heading out as well. By the time he left the underground prison, the Poison Masters had already been brought back to the Combat Master Hall, leaving behind only Hall Master Xing, Wu Shi, Luo Chichi, and the others. Zhong Shi. Seeing that Zhong Xian was fine, the crowd heaved a sigh of relief before quickly gathering around him. I have already talked to those poison masters, and they will heed the commands of the Combat Master Hall in the future. Zhong Xian smiled. Yuan, Principal Zhong, thank you for your words of wisdom. Hall Master Xing clasped his fist and thanked. Words of wisdom? Seeing the delight and gratefulness on the other party's face, Zhong Xian was bewildered. He had noticed Hall Master Xing's reluctance regarding the matter when he first proposed it, and he had been worried that the latter would abruptly change his mind halfway through. Yet, after returning from a short trip to the underground prison, the other party was suddenly thanking him for the matter. Just what in the world had happened for the latter to change his mind so swiftly? You're being too polite. This is part of my responsibility as a master teacher. Even though Zhong Xian had no idea what was going through Hall Master Xing's head, humility had always been one of his dominant traits, so he quickly replied so. On the other hand, seeing how humble Zhong Xian was, not taking credit for his action at all, Hall Master Xing's respect for the other party deepened. How in the world could there be such a selfless person in the world? Was he the living embodiment of altruism? Principal Zhong, may I know what you intend to do after this? Wu Shi asked. I intend to pay a visit to the Painter Guild and the Appraiser Hall to take the corresponding 7-star examinations so that I can be promoted to a 7-star master teacher. Zhong Xian revealed his intentions without any reservation. He was originally intending to head to the Appraiser Hall, but he was suddenly called here by King Zhongqing on the way. Thinking about it, he couldn't help but feel that it was a huge waste of time. Does Wu Shi has any matter for me? Zhong Xian asked. To be honest, I was thinking that if Principal Zhong doesn't have any urgent matter at hand, it would be good if you could follow me to the Master Teacher Pavilion to discuss the results of my investigation. The results of your investigation? Yuan Wu Shi nodded. According to what Zhong Yinqiu said, the master teacher who had duped him of the intelligence goes by the name of Chen Zhe, who happens to be the direct disciple of Vice Pavilion Master Tian as well. I have already arrested Chen Zhe, and is currently imprisoned in our Master Teacher Pavilion. If Principal Zhong is free now, I would like to invite you over to meet him. This. Zhong Xian was slightly hesitant. In truth, he wasn't too interested in this matter. Since even Vice Pavilion Master Tian himself had been imprisoned, it would do for the Master Teacher Pavilion to slowly interrogate the both of them. At this point, it didn't really matter whether he were to be involved in the matter or not. Just as he was about to turn down Wu Shi's request, the latter suddenly smiled. Actually, there's no need for Zhong Shi to rush into taking the painter and appraiser examination. To tell you the truth, there will be an appraisal convention later on, and if you are free, I can bring you there along with me. The head of the Appraiser Guild and Painter Guild should be attending as well, and if I were to introduce you to them there, it should make things more convenient for you on their side. Appraisal convention? What is that? Zhong Xian asked doubtfully. From time to time, when new artifacts of unknown backgrounds are uncovered, a convention would be held over them so as to appraise the artifacts and see if they could be fixed. While it may appear to be an event for appraisers, over the years, it has gradually evolved into a high-class social event where most renowned and influential figures in Qingyuan City would attend. Wu Shi replied. Zhong Xian pondered for a moment before nodding. All right then. He had departed from the Combat Master Hall early in the morning, and after the events at the Terpsichore Guild and King Zhongqing Manor, it was already in the late afternoon now, nearing evening. Rather than fumble his way into the guild and waste more time, it would be far more convenient for him to first meet the heads of the Painter Guild and Appraiser Hall for the matter. Hearing Zhong Xian agree to the matter, Wu Shi smiled in delight. Great. I'll be leaving first to make some preparations then. I'll see you at the Master Teacher Pavilion later on, after which, he turned around and left. Shortly after, Hall Master Xing and the others bade their farewell as well, leaving only Zhong Xian, Sun Qiong, Luo Chichi, and Yu Fei around. Zhong Xian turned to the other three and said, You all should return to our accommodation at the Combat Master Hall. Yes. Knowing that he had caused a huge trouble this time around, Sun Qiong quickly nodded obediently. Teacher, I have some doubts which I would like to ask you. May I know if it's convenient for you? Luo Chichi bit her lips as she looked at Zhong Xian nervously. Of course, feel free to ask anything. Zhong Xian replied with a kind smile. Noting that Luo Chichi had something private to ask, Sun Qiong and Yufei took their leave. After confirming that there was no one around, Luo Chichi set up an isolation barrier around them before asking, "Teacher, the affairs today have left some doubts in my mind, and I hope that you can answer them. I have been paying a close look to the earlier conflict. Vice Pavilion Master Tian and King Zhongqing have attempted to pin a crime on you using underhanded means, and I do agree that they should be punished for it, but is it really alright to frame them like that? Wouldn't that be going too far? Isn't it against the values preached in the way of teacher?" She had known Zhongxian ever since the time she had spent in Huanyu Empire, and for the longest of time, she had viewed the latter to be a role model for her. From saving her in Wu Yang's underground chamber to risking himself to rescue Yufei to venturing into the dangerous Cloud Mist Ridge to tame all of the saint beasts. All of these matters only served to build the noble and selfless image of the young man before her. With time, his image within her grew bigger and bigger, and she even began to think that he was just like the world's teacher, a true master teacher through and through. Admittedly, he did resort to some schemes from time to time, but those were minor incidents, and they always concluded in a positive end. But everything she had witnessed today had overturned her view of him. No matter what, Vice Pavilion Master Tian was a 7-star pinnacle master teacher, the vice head of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion. To directly oppose a respected elder was already an infringement of the formalities and values that master teachers believed in and embraced. As such, she found that her faith was starting to waver. Instead of replying to Luo Chichi's doubts directly, Zhongxian asked her a question: "What does being a master teacher mean to you?" Master teacher. As teachers, we serve to clear away doubts and bring mankind to a greater height of prosperity. As role models, we strive to conduct ourselves honorably, displaying desirable values for others to emulate. Wrong. Your interpretation is all wrong. Zhongxian shook his head. Wrong. These are the commandments that all master teachers must learn to recite. There's no master teacher who doesn't know about it. Luo Chichi frowned in incomprehension. It's true that master teachers serve as teachers and role models to mankind, but we shouldn't neglect the fact that they are humans as well. Zhongxian replied. Humans? Yuan. As long as we remain human, we will have our own emotions and thoughts. That's simply our nature. Kongsha didn't create the Master Teacher Pavilion to churn out batch after batch of mindless puppets. Formalities and rules are there to guide, not to dictate. In situations where following rules and formalities go against one's conscience, it's fine to break free of it and do what one deems to be right. Zhongxian said. Master teachers should never aim to blindly follow existing conventions. That's what it means to stagnate and wither. Only when we open our mind and question freely will we be able to bring mankind to further heights, and that's what it means to be a master teacher. This. Luo Chichi fell into deep thoughts. I have once met a cultivator whose father is a master teacher. From a very young age, he has deeply respected his father and heeded the latter's words obediently, devoting his entirety to cultivation. He had always regarded his father's words to be the absolute truth. However, his father has never managed to achieve a breakthrough before his death, and this matter had left a trauma in the cultivator's heart. Deep within, he felt that since his father was unable to achieve a breakthrough, there was no way he would be able to take the final step forward either. Under his father's looming shadow, even when he has accumulated sufficient zhenqi and knowledge to achieve a breakthrough, his attempts still ended in failure. Zhongxian said. That is what it means to have a fixed mindset. While we are master teachers, we are students in the long road of life as well. As students, we should expand our minds and doubt what we see and hear instead of blindly heeding the words of those who have come before us. Take the incident today for example. It's clear that Vice Pavilion Master Qing is at wrong, so why should I just take his words for it and accept his verdict? He has a far higher standing than me, and I have no way to going against him directly. As a result, I can only resort to other means in order to stand up against him and protect myself. Then, what if a formidable master teacher were to use rules and conventions to force me to accept his point of view? Luo Chichi asked with a gleam in her eyes. Follow your heart. Zhongxian replied with a smile. No matter how formidable a master teacher is, Can he be any more formidable than Kongsha? In fact, even if Kongsha were to order you to kill a man, claiming that it's for the welfare of mankind, does that mean that you really should do it? Ultimately, you shouldn't allow others to dictate your actions. Look into your conscience, and determine what is right and wrong for yourself. As long as you disagree with the other party's words, you are always entitled to the right to reject his point of view. In the first place, if the other party is using rules and conventions to force you into submission, disregarding your own personal thoughts, he's already breaking the very foundations that make a master teacher. Since that's the case, there's no need to uphold formalities with the other party either. The light in Luo Chichi's eyes grew brighter and brighter, as if realization had dawned upon her. All right. In the end, those tricks are just means to protect oneself. I can't say that they are honorable, but sometimes, there is little choice but to resort to them. As long as you don't go overboard with them or utilize them to cause harm to the innocent, they aren't fundamentally at odds with the teachings of the Master Teacher Pavilion. There's no need for you to think too much into it. Zhong Xian shook his head. It was clear that the other party had cornered herself this time around. Master teachers shouldn't be inflexible individuals who only knew how to abide by the rules. Different circumstances called for the application of a different set of standards, and master teachers should know how to flexibly adapt to the situation whenever it was required. Luo Chichi was a talented individual, but she was simply lacking in the adaptability that Hu Yaro and the others possessed. I understand. Upon hearing the explanation, Luo Chichi's eyes lit up. She raised her gaze to look right into Zhong Xian's eyes and said, "Since teacher has already said so, I think that I should follow my heart as well." "Teacher, I like you." Zhong Xian. Chapter 1156. Zhong Zhouxiao. The sight before Zhong Xian turned dark, and he nearly fell to the ground. He thought that the other party was truly conflicted and lost, and yet, who could have thought that the other party was actually preparing a trap for him to jump into? All along, he had always been the one to scheme against others, and never had he thought that he would actually be outwitted by a young lass. To drop a bunch of philosophical questions first in order to lead him to tell her to follow her heart so that she would be justified to say what she wanted to say afterward. Zhong Xian cleared his throat and replied, "I like you too. I like everyone from the Shen faction as well. If I didn't like you, why would I accept you as my apothecary student? To be confessed by his own student. How embarrassing. Teacher, you know what I mean. The type of like that I am referring to isn't that." Luo Chichi stared at Zhong Xian intently with her large eyes as she spoke. "You should return to the Combat Master Hall first. I still have matters to attend to." Right after saying those words, without giving Luo Chichi an opportunity to respond, Zhong Xian turned around anxiously and flew in the direction of the Master Teacher Pavilion. Ha ha ha. Watching the sight, Luo Chichi couldn't help but burst into laughter. Her teacher had always been a composed person. This was the first time she was seeing him in such a fluster. "You were the one who told me to follow my heart. I might address you as my teacher, but we have never undergone an official acknowledgement ceremony. As long as I'm not your direct disciple, this isn't a problem at all," Luo Chichi muttered as her lips curled into a ravishing smile. In the master teacher continent, it wasn't appropriate for a student to harbor such thoughts about her teacher, so for a very long time, she had been suppressing her true desires. However, after her teacher's counseling, the dilemma that she had been facing finally cleared up, and a beautiful smile surfaced on her lips. She might have addressed Zhong Xian as her teacher, but since they hadn't gone through an acknowledgement ceremony, the teacher-student relationship between them had yet to be officialized. Since that was the case, it wasn't against the rules for her to court the other party. Phew. That was a close shave. After flying for some distance, Zhong Xian came to a halt and wiped away his cold sweat. While his actions may seem unprincipled time to time, he would never dream of laying his hands on his students. This was his moral boundary as a teacher and a belief he held firmly onto. Are kids nowadays all that brave? Zhong Xian shook his head. It took many, many days of hesitation before he could build up the courage needed to confess to Luo Ruoxin, and that young lass actually just directly said that she liked him to his face. My gosh, it was fortunate that he had fled quickly. Otherwise, Wouldn't he die of embarrassment if she were to say anything more than that? The world sure is becoming more and more open. Zhongxian looked at the sky and remarked deeply. He had always conducted himself properly so as to not get into any messy relationship with the ladies. Yet, who could have thought that he would still end up being placed in such an awkward situation? Just the thought of it left his head hurting. How was he to face Luo Chichi in the future? Forget it, I won't think about it anymore. I should head to the Master Teacher Pavilion first. Driving his soul depth, Zhongxian calmed his mind down before continuing on his way to the Master Teacher Pavilion. At that moment, however, he suddenly noticed a beautiful figure swiftly rushing towards him. Zhongsha, Yu Feiya, didn't you return back to the Combat Master Hall? Zhongxian was taken aback. At this point, Yu Feiya had already switched into a crimson dress which embraced her body tightly, fully displaying her alluring figure. It must be said that this fiery-tempered princess truly had a beautiful physique. It might pale in comparison to Hu Yaoyao, but her perfectly shaped hips which extended down to her slender legs was truly an eye to behold. At the same time, perhaps it was due to her intentionally concealing it in the past, but under the tight embrace of her dress, her chest looked far more voluptuous than before. At this moment, her appearance was one that would leave the gazes of others lingering upon her. Zhongsha, there's a matter which I need to talk to you about. Yu Feiya said with bit lips. Cough cough, I still have matters to attend to, so I'll talk to you some other time. Farewell. Zhongxian waved his hand hastily as he prepared to take his leave. This won't do. Since you are willing to listen to Chichi's words, why won't you listen to mine as well? Yu Feiya harumphed unhappily as she swiftly grabbed Zhongxian's arm. This. Cold sweat burst from Zhongxian's head. No matter how low his emotional quotient may be, the very fact that the other party had specially changed her dress up and return for him was more than sufficient clue for him to figure out what the other party was going to say. I'm only going to say one thing to you. I'm willing to follow you wherever you go in the future, even if it's to the end of the world. Yu Feiya said. She was one with a fiery temper, and she usually dealt with matters decisively as well. Nevertheless, it took all of her courage in order to say those words. I see. Hearing those words, Zhongxian was pondered for a moment before replying, Very well, acknowledge me as your teacher then. As long as you become my student, I'll bring you wherever I go. Otherwise, you would only be able to follow me as my maid. Yu Feiya glared at Zhongxian furiously. Ah, is that a no? I guess we'll just have to forget about this matter then. Alright, I still have things to attend to at the moment, so I'll be taking my leave first. Who? Once again, without any hesitation, Zhongxian pushed his Heaven's Path movement art to its very limits and disappeared on the spot. Me. Upon seeing Zhongxian left, Yu Feiya's tightly clenched fists finally opened up once more. With a smirk, she muttered, I would like to see who will you choose, Chichi or me. What the heck is this? Fleeing to a remote alley, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. Just one awkward situation was intolerable to him, and they just had to come in pairs. It was truly too pressurizing to face the confessions of others simultaneously. If not for the recent rise in his soul depth, he might have just collapsed under the immense mental stress and lose his mind. It won't do to drag this matter out for too long. I have to find Ruoxin soon and show them that I already have a girlfriend so that they would give up on me. Zhongxian shook his head. Being too outstanding also came with its troubles too. How vexing. He really had to proclaim his attached status soon, or else, if everyone were to come confessing to him one after another, even a person of his soul depth wouldn't be able to take it. Just fending off the two of them took everything that he got. If more were to come, he wouldn't have to cultivate any more. The next time I meet any ladies, I must accept them as my disciple in advance so that they wouldn't have any opportunity to harbor such thoughts. Zhongxian thought as he stroked his lower jaws. Making his way forward as he contemplated over this matter, he soon arrived at the Master Teacher Pavilion. The Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion was even grander than the Combat Master Hall. The majestic and towering building seemed to signify the dignity and standing of the number one occupation on the Master Teacher Pavilion. Even from a distance, Zhongxian could see many master teachers walking to and fro the building, and countless cultivators had gathered in the area in hopes of finding a suitable teacher to guide them along. Zhong Xian walked into a remote alley and swiftly switched into his master teacher robe and pinned on his master teacher emblem before making his way into the master teacher pavilion. Upon seeing the 6 brilliant stars gleaming on his chest, there was no one who dared to stop his passageway. Every single person that he walked by bowed to him respectfully. While 6-star master teachers might seem nothing much to the topmost echelon of Qingyuan Empire, they were still formidable existences to the eyes of the common populace. Not to mention, a 6-star master teacher as young as Zhong Xian, given sufficient time, was bound to become a 7-star master teacher as long as he didn't die prematurely. Zhongshe, can I have your autograph? I don't have any paper on hand, so why don't you sign it on my inner wear instead? Hey, don't cut my cue, I was the one who came first. Zhongshe, just sign over here. Scram to one side, Zhongshe is mine. Shortly after walking through the doors of the Master Teacher Pavilion, Zhong Xian suddenly saw a huge group of girls rushing in his direction. Zhong Xian's face warped in astonishment. There were plenty of idol-chasing crazed fans in his previous world as well, but this was the first time he had seen someone asking to have an autograph signed on her inner wear in public. Everyone, I understand your agitation, but I am an upright person, and I am already attached too. Pardon me, but I won't be able to fulfill your wishes. Besides, as a master teacher, I hope that you will focus on my inner beauty instead of just my appearances. Zhong Xian waved his hand and said, but before he could finish his words, the group of ladies had already rushed by his side, heading out of the master teacher pavilion. Lunatic. One of the ladies in the group stopped for a brief moment, turned to examine Zhong Xian from head to toe before harumphing in disdain. After which, she turned her flabby face back forward, and shaking her millstone-sized bottom, she charged forward along with the crowd while shouting, "Zhongshe, wait for me." In the direction where she was charging towards, Zhong Xian soon spotted a white-robed young man standing not too far away with 7 stars gleaming on his chest. The white-robed young man looked at the crowd apologetically and said, "Pardon me, but I still have important matters to attend to at the moment. I'll sign autographs for you all later on. But we want it now." The group of ladies exclaimed resoundingly. All right. Despite the demanding attitude of his fans, the white-robed young man waved his hand patiently to calm them down. After which, he gracefully flicked his hand in the air for a few moments, and a floating name appeared. Suspended imagery? He is a 7-star painter? Zhong Xian's eyebrows shot up. A painting could be divided into various grades: reality depiction, spiritual canvas, infused intentions, breathtaking verisimilitude, spirit creation, spirit wisdom. Those who were able to produce works at the level of spirit wisdom were already worthy of becoming 6-star painter. Up to 6-star, painters would require a paper as a medium for them to express their creative conceptions. However, upon reaching 7-star, they would be capable of producing their work in mid-air, painting their picture and words without anything to serve as a medium. And the fact that the young man was capable of writing in mid-air showed that he had already comprehended the 7th level of painting, suspended imagery. Zhong Zhou. Zhong Xian read the name that the white-robed young man written, and his lips suddenly began twitching. It turned out that the young man had the same surname as him, so naturally, others addressed him as Zhongshe as well. How embarrassing. Indeed, there were plenty of people in the world who went by the surname of Zhong as well. He wasn't the only Zhongshe in the world. Just that, his name went by a single character of Xian, which meaning could be interpreted as only levitating a few inches off the ground. On the other hand, the other party's name is Zhou, reminiscent of a rock soaring in the 9 heavens. The conception behind their names was simply far too different. While Zhong Xian was lamenting over how shallow his name was, he examined the 2 words, Zhong Zhou, closely. Those 2 words carried a unique beauty and aura around them that seemed to draw one into a trance, rendering their minds incapable of anything but to appreciate the immensely beautiful words before them. This was an ability that only 7-star painters could wield. Alright, I'll just leave a single autograph here, you can decide its allocation amongst yourselves. I still have some urgent matters to attend to, so I'll be taking my leave first. After writing his name, Zhong Zhouxiao smiled at the crowd before turning around and leaving elegantly. He's simply too dashing. The ladies who had demanded the autograph a moment ago couldn't help but fall into a daze upon seeing his smile. As expected of Zhong Shi. Every time he comes to the master-teacher pavilion, there would always be a huge group of girls waiting for him. Compared to him, it's like we don't even exist at all. Well, he's the #1 genius of the Qingyuan Empire Master-Teacher Pavilion, a 1 in 500-year prodigy. Furthermore, given how cultured and refined he is, how can we compete with him? Indeed, he's far beyond our league. A few master-teachers lamented bitterly as they walked by the area. The #1 genius of Qingyuan Empire Master-Teacher Pavilion? Zhong Xian muttered beneath his breath after hearing their words. Indeed, to be able to become a 7-star master teacher at such a young age and achieve such outstanding accomplishments as a painter, it was little wonder why so many ladies would go in a frenzy over him. Indeed, there are many talented prodigies in this world. I am not too bad myself, but I mustn't get complacent over it. Zhong Xian warned himself. While he might have been able to advance his cultivation swiftly, he mustn't get conceited over the matter. Given how large the master-teacher continent was, there were bound to be outstanding geniuses who could match him somewhere. While Zhong Xian was deep in thought, the lady with the millstone bottom from before walking over once more and glanced at him disdainfully. What are you looking at? Have you never seen a beauty in your life? Zhong Xian. Chapter 1157. News on Luo Ruoxin. He had met plenty of beautiful women before, and he had just been confessed to by 2 of them a moment ago. But he had never met one with a millstone-like bottom before. To put it in slightly harsher terms, she could have served as a road roller. Forget it. However, Zhong Xian did not pay too much attention to the matter. There was not any need to be angered by something as trivial as that, so he simply asked around for Wu Shi's whereabouts before heading over. Not too long later, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he quickly walked forward. Mu Shi. The person whom he had spotted was no other than Mu Yuan. After leaving Qiuwu Palace, the other party had returned straight back to Qingyuan Empire. He had promised the other party to meet him when he came over to Qingyuan City, but who would have thought that they would bump into one another so coincidentally here? Upon seeing Zhong Xian, Mu Shi quickly clasped his fist and greeted with a smile, "Senior uncle." Yuan. Zhong Xian nodded. "You have achieved a breakthrough to Saint 4 Dan?" For a very long time, Mu Shi's cultivation had been confined at Saint 3 Dan due to the presence of metal attribute energy suppressing his strength, preventing him from achieving a breakthrough. Thus, he had remained as a 7-star high-tier master teacher for a very long time. Yet, in just a short month of absence, he had successfully made a breakthrough to the primordial spirit realm. Indeed. It's all thanks to Yang Shi's guidance that I was able to take the final step forward, Mu Shi replied with deep gratitude. His encounter with Yang Shi back in Hongyuan City might have been short, but it had been truly life-changing. If not for the latter's guidance, he might very well have remained stagnant at Saint 3 Dan for his entire life, unable to advance any further. After trading a few pleasantries, Mu Shi asked, "May I know if Yang Shi has come over to Qingyuan City as well? If possible, I would like to pay him a visit and thank him personally." It was his benefactor who had allowed him to walk out of the shadow of the past and neutralize the metal attribute energy within his body, thus allowing him to achieve a breakthrough. He had been wanting to thank the other party for a very long time, but it was unfortunate that the other party's whereabouts were truly elusive. Ever since that parting back then, he had not been able to gather any news on the other party. Zhong Xian shook his head. "My teacher's whereabouts are a mystery to me as well. Usually, he is the one who finds me whenever there is a need to." In essence, Yang Xian's identity was just a background that Zhong Xian had forged to instill fear and deference in the hearts of others. Otherwise, it was highly likely that the swift advancement of his cultivation would have roused the greed of others, and perhaps, some might even have attempted to kidnap him in the hope of uncovering his secret. However, with an unfathomable expert like Yang Xian backing him from the shadows, the others would have to weigh whether it was worth offending an 8-star master teacher over Zhong Xian's secret or not. After all, putting aside the overwhelming strength that an 8-star master teacher possessed, more importantly, the master teacher pavilion would surely be backing him as well. Those who dared to offend an 8-star master teacher would risk being completely annihilated by the #1 occupation on the master teacher continent. The very eradication of the entire Soul Oracle occupation should be sufficient to highlight the overwhelming might that the master teacher pavilion wielded. Since Zhongxian was relying on Yang Xian as his trump card, naturally, it would be best to keep the other party as elusive as possible. The more times that Yang Xian appeared, the higher the chances that Zhongxian would make a mistake and give himself away. I was still planning to meet Yang Shi once before my departure to thank him for his help. Mu Shi shook his head bitterly. I guess it can't be helped. Departure? Where is Mu Shi going? Zhongxian asked with a frown. Mu Shi was a master teacher of the Qingyuan conferred Empire Master Teacher Pavilion. Where else could he possibly want to head to? After neutralizing of the metal attribute energy within my body and achieving a breakthrough in my cultivation, the words that Yang Shi said to me that night have been lingering my mind. Thus, I made up my mind to return to the Mu clan. I'm willing to accept any punishment that they issue to me, so long as they will accept me as one of their own once more. Mu Shi spoke with resolution. Zhongxian was slightly dazed for a moment before nodding in realization. Mu Shi was actually from one of the sage clans, the Mu clan. However, in his earlier years, he had unintentionally leaked the secrets of his clan to a lady whom he fancied, causing him to be exiled, thus landing him in his current plight. A fallen leaf should return to its roots. After so many days of wandering, I think that it's about time for me to return to my home. Even if I cannot receive their forgiveness and eventually lose my life there, at the very least, it will be better than spending my life aimlessly out here, Mu Shi said deeply. Zhongxian fell silent. He did not have a family, so he could not really relate to those emotions. However, he could clearly sense Mu Shi's resolution from the latter's eyes. It seemed like even if the Mu clan sentenced Mu Shi to death, the latter would still accept the verdict willingly. Mu Shi continued with a bitter look on his face. I don't wish to remain an escapee for life. Escapee? That's right. No matter what, the blood of the Mu clan flows through my veins. There's no way I can truly sever my relations with them, so I think it's about time for me to face it. And to be honest, even though I didn't think much of it then when I first left the Mu clan, the long years have given me more than sufficient time to reflect on the matter, and I regret my decision then. I really regret it. Mu Shi shook his head and sighed soulfully. Looking at Mu Shi's weathered face, Zhongxian found himself unable to find the correct words to console the latter. It took a long while before the silence between the two was broken. Mu Shi turned to Zhongxian and said, Senior uncle, I know that you like Luo Shi, but I think that there are still some words that I should say to you. He had witnessed the relationship between Zhongxian and Luo Ruoxin, and he had a clear idea of what was going on. Please speak, Zhongxian replied politely. To be honest with you, I am not too sure about Luo Shi's exact identity either, but based on what I have observed thus far, there's a very high chance that she's related with a sage clan, the Luo clan. If she truly is the young princess of the Luo clan, unless Yang Shi specially speaks on your behalf, it will be extremely difficult for you to wed her, Mu Shi said. You aren't too sure about Ruoxin's exact identity either? Zhongxian was taken aback by those words. Based on what he knew, Mu Shi was the one who had brought Luo Shi to the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. Thus, he had always assumed that Mu Shi would know a lot about the latter. He had not expected to hear such words from Mu Shi's mouth. It has been too many years since I left the Mu clan and took root in Qingyuan City, so I am no longer in touch with the happenings there. However, judging from how Luo Shi has been able to acquire strength that far surpasses mine despite her young age, there is little doubt that she's the famed genius of the Luo clan. Not only does she wield the strongest artifact of the Luo clan, she also boasts the purest bloodline. There's no way the Luo clan will allow a person like her to marry an outsider. Mu Shi shook his head grimly. I understand that. Zhongxian lowered his gaze as he nodded slowly. Guild leader Han and Wu Shi had told him about the matter previously as well. He knew that it would be difficult for him to get together with Luo Shi, but he had no intentions of backing down from the challenge. As a celestial master teacher and a celestial saint, he was confident that he would be able to become a man worthy of Luo Shi. If the heavens were to stand in his way, he would just have to crush the heavens. Mu Shi gazed at Zhongxian deeply for a short moment before nodding. All right then. Since you know about it, I won't say too much about it either. However, don't blame me for being too naggy. I just want to offer you one last word of advice. Don't allow her to make a decision that she will regret in the future. Regret? Zhongxian's heart jolted. Those words had truly struck the depths of his heart. In truth, he had been considering simply snatching Luo Ruoxin away if the Luo clan adamantly opposed their relationship. In any case, he was confident that it was just a matter of time before he gained sufficient strength to do so. However, after hearing Mu Shi's advice, he could not help but rethink the matter. Yes, he might be able to get together with Luo Ruoxin using such a forceful method, but did he really want to leave her with such a deep regret for life? As the young princess of the Luo clan, she had probably grown up amid the loving care of her family and clan members. Without a doubt, she had deep feelings for her clan. Even if she were to choose him over her family in the end, there was no doubt that her decision would leave her with lingering regrets and a great deal of pain. Clenching his fists tightly, Zhongxian said, "Don't worry, I'll make her family acknowledge me. I won't put her in a tough spot." There was only one way for him to not put Luo Ruoxin in a difficult position, and that was to have the Luo clan acknowledge their relationship. It would be an uphill battle, but for Luo Ruoxin's sake, this was the only path that he could choose. Seeing that the young man had made up his choice, Mu Shi nodded. "I see. I wish you luck then." "Right, Mu Shi," Ruoxin said that she had to leave because she had matters to attend to. "Do you have any idea where she might have gone? Also, do you know where the Luo clan is located?" Zhongxian asked. Luo Ruoxin had left hurriedly the previous time, and she did not say where she was headed to or where he could find her. However, since Mu Shi was from a sage clan himself, he might know a thing or two. Mu Shi contemplated for a moment before replying. "The Luo clan is based in the city of sages, Cufu. However, I think that it's more likely that she has headed to the Sanctum of Sages instead of the Luo clan." Sanctum of Sages? Gathered in the Sanctum of Sages are either the offspring of sage clans or the most talented prodigies of the entire master-teacher continent. Mu Shi pondered for a moment before continuing. "Based on what I have heard, the young princess of the sage clan is a student of the Sanctum of Sages. However, it seems like she escaped from there a while back due to some kind of issue, and her whereabouts became unknown afterwards." "She's a student of the Sanctum of Sages?" Zhongxian was astonished. He had no idea what Luo Ruoxin's true strength was, but the fact that she had been able to easily bind the leaving Aperture Realm Skyleaf King was more than sufficient to prove that her strength had far surpassed his imaginations. And yet, who would have thought that even an expert with strength like hers was only a student? Wasn't the Sanctum of Sages a little too scary? UN. The Sanctum of Sages serves to cultivate the offspring of sage clans and young geniuses into top-notch experts of the master-teacher continent. Generations of the head of the master-teacher pavilion headquarters and the various influential sage clans have all emerged from the Sanctum of Sages. "Senior uncle, if you wish to have the Luo clan acknowledge the relationship between you and Luoxia, it would be best for you to enroll into the Sanctum of Sages as well and make your name there. This way, no one will dare take you lightly despite your humble background," Mu Shi continued. Zhongxian nodded upon hearing those words. Even though it was known to most that he had a young Shi backing him, he himself knew better than anyone else that it was just a huge lie. If he wanted to marry Luo Ruoxin openly, there was no way he could rely on Yang Shi. He could still use Yang Shi to deal with smaller conflicts, the other party would not know better anyway. However, before the top master teachers in the continent, there was little doubt that his petty disguise would be unraveled in an instant. Against them, he would not even know how he died. Given so, the Sanctum of Sages was indeed his best bet. No matter what, he had to give it a try. Of course, most importantly of all, if he could enroll in the Sanctum of Sages, there was a good chance that he would be able to meet Luo Ruoxin sooner. It was difficult for a new couple to spend even a day away from one another, let alone a month. "May I know how I can enroll in the Sanctum of Sages?" Zhongxian asked. The semester for the Sanctum of Sages starts at around the middle of the 9th month, and it usually recruits a new batch of students before that. Based on what I know, the conferred Empire Master Teacher Pavilions have a slot each to nominate a candidate to enroll in the Sanctum of Sages, and as long as the candidate clears a test, they will be brought into the Sanctum of Sagi. Musha replied. The middle of the 9th month. Isn't that less than 2 months away? Zhong Xian's eyebrows shot up in alarm. Indeed, it's less than 2 months away. To be more exact, it's a month and 17 days. Musha replied. This. Zhong Xian frowned. Then, may I know what the prerequisites are for obtaining the nomination slot? Since the Sanctum of Sages only accepted top-notch geniuses from all over the Master Teacher continent, there was bound to be some fundamental prerequisite for enrollment. One has to be a 7-star high-tier Master Teacher at the very minimum and possess a cultivation at the embryonic soul realm. Musha replied. 7-star high-tier. Zhong Xian nodded. He was currently just a step away from reaching the embryonic soul realm. As long as he could gather sufficient concentrated high-tier spirit stones and Saint 3 Dan cultivation technique manuals to compile the corresponding Heaven's Path divine art, he would be able to achieve a breakthrough easily. That would not be too much of a problem. However, Musha hesitated for a moment before continuing. The nomination slot for our Master Teacher Pavilion this year has already been allocated. It was a decision made by Pavilion Master Go personally, so I fear that it might be difficult for you to obtain it. It has already been allocated. Who is it? Not expecting the slot to be taken, Zhong Xian's face darkened. At this moment, a figure suddenly emerged in his mind, and he could not help but exclaim, could the person you are talking about be Zhong Zhouxiao? Musha nodded. That's right, it's him. If I'm not mistaken, he should be an offspring from the Zhong clan, another one of the sage clans. Chapter 1158, Heart-Tempering Bridge Zhong clan? Zhong Xian's face darkened. Back then, Wu Shi and guild leader Han had told him that the little princess of the Luo clan was betrothed to a powerful sage clan, and the said sage clan was none other than the Zhong clan. As such, he could not help but feel deeply uncomfortable upon hearing that name. He might have been able to remain calm before any other matter, but just for this single matter, he could not maintain his composure. If he could, he would not have pummeled Feng Zun so viciously after hearing that the latter had confessed to Luo Ruoxin. Musha nodded. This is still a conjecture on my part at the moment, but I do believe it to be so. Wait, that doesn't sound right. Zhong Xian frowned as he recalled what Musha had said earlier. Since the Sanctum of Sages serves to cultivate the offspring of sage clans, surely Zhong Zhouxiao should be able to enroll into it directly. Is there any need for him to come to the Qingyuan Empire to vie for this single slot? The Sanctum of Sages is indeed much more lenient toward the sage clans. While the conferred Empire Master Teacher Pavilions only acquire a nomination slot each year, each sage clan obtains at least 10 slots each year at the very minimum. For behemoths like the Zhong clan, they acquire at least 30 slots each year, Musha explained. However, for a clan as large as the Zhong clan, 30 slots are only sufficient for them to send in the inner clan members with purer bloodlines. As for the clan members from the side families, whose bloodlines are thinner, they basically stand no chance whatsoever. As such, they scatter themselves among the conferred empire to vie for the other nomination slots in order to enroll into the Sanctum of Sages. Once they get in, they are entitled to the best cultivation resources and the most outstanding heritages. To the side families of powerful clans, this is an ideal opportunity for them to change their fate, so no one is willing to allow this opportunity slip through their fingers. With them around, doesn't that mean that the local prodigies of the conferred empires don't stand a chance at all? Zhong Xian asked in displeasure. There was only a single nomination slot in each conferred empire, and if the side families of the sage clans sent their members over, wouldn't the local prodigies stand no chance at all? Survival of the fittest, this is something that can't be helped. If there is a prodigy in the conferred empire who can surpass the member of the side family, the prodigy will naturally obtain the slot. Otherwise, the nomination slot can only be given to the member of the side family. Musha shook his head. Even the offspring from the sage clans were not above the rules. They dared not openly snatch slots from the conferred Empire Master Teacher Pavilions, but they were still allowed to compete for it fairly. If their skills surpassed those of the local master teachers of the conferred empire, the slot would only be allocated to them. The Sanctum of Sages only accepted the strongest experts on the continent. If one was inferior to their competitors, it would only mean that they were not qualified to join the Sanctum of Sages. The rules were that simple, direct, and harsh. You're right. Zhong Xian nodded. This was just like the combat master selection. As the students of his Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy had the strongest fighting prowess, it was natural that they would all be picked. The other 3 Master Teacher Academies had outstanding students as well, and many of them would have stood a chance had they not been put against the candidates of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. It was unfortunate for them, but they only had their own bad luck to blame. That was how harsh the world of cultivation was. Nevertheless, the presence of the Master Teacher Pavilion still brought around some degree of meritocracy. Even if an individual had a humble background, as long as he had sufficient talent and were willing to work hard, he would be able to make a name for himself too. Take Zhong Xian for example. Despite being a mere orphan from the Qianxian kingdom, he had still been able to slowly scale up the ladder and eventually become the principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. While Zhong Jiuxiao is only from a side family of the Zhong clan, the talent that he possesses is undeniable. Despite being only 27 this year, he has already reached the astounding height of a 7-star high-tier master teacher, a Saint 3 Dan Pinnacle expert. His fighting prowess and capabilities are unmatched by any master teacher in the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Academy, so naturally, the nomination slot went to him, Mu Shi said. To tell you the truth, the side families of sage clans don't possess a particularly high standing, and the resources that they are entitled to are severely limited as well. For one as young as him to have achieved such accomplishments, on top of possessing considerable talent, he must have put in quite a bit of hard work as well. Zhong Xian nodded. He could relate deeply to that. Indeed. Talent without diligence was futile. Even a prodigy would achieve little in their life if they refused to devote themselves to their work. Again, taking Zhong Xian for example, it had taken him an entire year of blood, sweat, and tears before he was able to earn his current accomplishments. The difficulties he had faced over the year were truly hard to describe using words. Zhong Xian turned to Mu Shi and asked, "I'll definitely have to head to the Sanctum of Sages, but how can I obtain the slot?" Now that he knew that Luo Ruoxin was likely to be at the Sanctum of Sages, he definitely had to head there as well. Regardless of the means, he was determined to obtain the nomination slot. You only have one chance. In 20 days, the Sanctum of Sages will send an envoy over to escort the nominated candidate over. If you can successfully become a 7-star master teacher, obtain a cultivation of Saint 3 Dan Pinnacle, and defeat Zhong Jiuxiao in every aspect before then, naturally, the qualifications will go to you. The timing is extremely rushed, but I fear that there is no other way, Mu Shi said. 20 days. Zhong Xian pondered for a moment before nodding decisively. All right. If it was just 2 to 3 days, he would need to rush a bit. However, 20 days was more than sufficient for him. All right. Mu Shi looked at Zhong Xian doubtfully. If I recall correctly, your cultivation is still only at Saint 1 Dan Pinnacle. You are still 2 whole realms away from reaching Saint 3 Dan Pinnacle. Oh, I accidentally made a breakthrough to Saint 2 Dan Pinnacle last night, Zhong Xian replied with a smile as he leaked out a little bit of his cultivation. Due to the unique nature of the Heaven's Path divine art, as long as he did not intentionally display his cultivation, not even Mu Shi would be able to discern his current cultivation realm. Accidentally? You made a breakthrough to Saint 2 Dan Pinnacle? Mu Shi's lips twitched wildly. He felt something stifling in his chest, and it took him a long while before he managed to soothe it. Sighing deeply, he remarked, "Senior Uncle Shaw is a talented individual. Back when they were still in Qiuwu Palace, the other party had only been at Saint 1 Dan Pinnacle. Yet, over the span of a single month, he had managed to advance a whole cultivation realm. The rate of advancement of his cultivation was truly unheard of in history. However, I fear that just this much might not be enough. There is a huge gap between the spiritual perception realm and the embryonic soul realm, and even if you do achieve a breakthrough within the next 20 days, it'll take at least several years before you will be able to fuse your soul into your origin soul perfectly." Mu She was not too optimistic about Zhong Xian's chances. Beyond Saint Realm, progressing past every single realm was like venturing into a whole new world. Even the most talented of prodigies would require several years before they were able to fully grasp a cultivation realm and advance to the next level. To be honest, attempting a breakthrough within a short 20 days was nothing more than a pipe dream. And more importantly, Zhong Zhouxiao isn't an ordinary Saint 3 Dan pinnacle cultivator. He has built up a powerful foundation, allowing him to match cultivators far stronger than he is. Ordinary Saint 4 Dan cultivators are no match for him, and even I would only stand a 50% chance against him after my breakthrough, Mu She explained with a frown. As an ex-inner clan member of the Mu clan, he had cultivated top-notch cultivation techniques and battle techniques, granting him strength far surpassing that of ordinary master teachers. Yet, despite his recent breakthrough to Saint 4 Dan, the other party was still able to match him equally with his Saint 3 Dan pinnacle cultivation. Just this in itself was sufficient to show how fearsome an existence Zhong Zhouxiao was. You stand a 50% chance against him? Zhong Xian asked contemplatively. A moment later, he added, Mu She, do you mind testing my strength? Test your strength. Sure. Knowing Zhong Xian's intentions, Mu She took him to the training grounds within the Master Teacher Pavilion, and crossing his hands before his chest, he said, feel free to make a move. I have not reinforced my cultivation after my breakthrough yet, so ultimately, I am still a primordial spirit realm expert. It would be good for you to experience the true might of a primordial spirit realm expert so that you are mentally prepared. Don't worry, I won't use my full strength. Who? Before Mu She could finish his words, a figure suddenly appeared before him, and before he could even process what was going on, he saw a fist abruptly flying for his chest. Not expecting Zhong Xian to be able to move so swiftly, Mu She's eyebrows shot up. He swiftly tapped into the entirety of his strength, wanting to fend off the other party's punch. However, just as he was preparing his retaliation, he suddenly felt an overwhelming soul pressure assaulting him from the surroundings, preventing him from moving. Pang! The punch struck Mu She's chest squarely, and he was knocked straight out of the training grounds before crashing heavily into the wall. Huge mouthfuls of blood spewed wildly from his mouth. Following which, a young man's apologetic voice sounded in his ears. I'm truly sorry. Mu She, are you still fine? I already tried holding myself back earlier, using just a fifth of my strength, but I didn't think that you wouldn't be able to receive it. Pu. Mu She's face paled, and another huge mouthful of blood spurted from his lips. He nearly fainted on the spot after hearing those words. For a brief moment, he had thought that he was facing a Saint 4 Dan pinnacle expert instead of a Saint 2 Dan cultivator. Against such strength, even 5 of him would not be an opponent for the other party. Zhong Xian quickly helped Mu She up apologetically while asking with a doubtful look on his face, does that master teacher Zhong Zhouxiao only possess this much strength? Cough cough. Mu She's face reddened, and he coughed out yet another mouthful of blood. While the Mu clan did not specialize in combat, no matter what, he still used to be one of the inner clan members who inherited the heritage of the main family. His fighting prowess should have been far stronger than his peers, and yet, he was actually subdued in a single punch by a master teacher whose cultivation was far lower than his. Just the thought of it left him deeply stifled within. It took a long while before Mu She was able to calm himself down. With a face reddened in embarrassment, he said awkwardly, actually, Zhong Zhouxiao's prowess is slightly above mine. Nevertheless, with fighting prowess like yours, even if you don't achieve a breakthrough, you should be able to defeat him easily. If Zhong Xian was already this powerful with a cultivation of Saint 2 Dan, once he broke through to Saint 3 Dan, Zhong Zhouxiao would probably stand no chance against him at all. Other than the requirement on my cultivation, what other prerequisites are there to enter the Sanctum of Sages? If possible, I would like to ask Mu She to train along with me so that I can get a clear grasp of the standards. Mu She's face warped in horror upon hearing those words, and he quickly shook his head. I'm not free. Just a simple test of cultivation had nearly cost him his life. If that were to continue, he feared that the confidence that he had barely picked up would be shattered once more. What you have to do now is be promoted to a 7-star master teacher as soon as possible. That is the fundamental prerequisite for joining the sanctum of sages. If you do not meet this prerequisite, it'll be futile even if your fighting prowess exceeds that of Zhong Zhouxiao's, Mu Shi said. Zhong Xian nodded in response to those words. This happened to coincide with his current goal. At the moment, he was just lacking 2 more supporting occupations before he was qualified to be promoted to a 7-star master teacher. All right, I have already said all that I should say. I need to be on my way now, so farewell. After saying those words, Mu Shi turned around and left hurriedly. He was afraid that if he remained any longer, he would be traumatized once more. Not expecting Mu Shi to leave so decisively, Zhong Xian shook his head in disappointment. Sighing deeply, he walked out of the training grounds and headed in the direction of Wu Shi's residence, as pointed out by a master teacher from before. Before Zhong Xian could get far, he heard a series of ear-piercing shrieks in his ear. Zhongshe, you can do it. Zhongshe, we believe in you. You will definitely be able to set a new record. Looking past the huge crowd, he saw a long stone bridge. A man was standing right on top of the bridge with sweat flowing profusely down his face. It seemed like he was under immense pressure. The man was none other than the offspring of the Zhong clan, Zhong Zhouxiao. What is he doing? Zhong Xian was perplexed. At this moment, a master teacher amid the crowd suddenly exclaimed loudly, Zhong Zhouxiao is challenging the heart-tempering bridge. Chapter 1159, You Can Do It Heart-Tempering Bridge. Confused, Zhong Xian turned his gaze over and saw that the one who had just spoken was a 6-star master teacher like him. The other party seemed to be in his 40s, and there was an aged look of a veteran on his face. Zhong Shi's talent has allowed him to advance his cultivation swiftly, but that, in exchange, has made his mental fortitude his greatest weakness. As such, Pavilion Master Go has sent him out to temper his mind well. He has returned from his journey just a while ago, and it seems like he's attempting to give it a try to see if he is able to break his previous record, the 6-star master teacher explained. To be able to raise his cultivation realm to Saint 3-dan pinnacle and advance his master teacher rank to 7-star before hitting his 30s, Zhong Zhouxiao was indeed a formidable genius. On top of that, as he was from the sage Zhong clan, there was also nothing to pick about his background either. The only thing that was lacking about him was his mental fortitude. This was also the reason why he had been working on it over the past month, hoping to achieve a breakthrough in it soon. I am asking about the heart-tempering bridge, not Zhong Zhouxiao. Zhong Xian cleared his throat. All he wanted to know was what the heart-tempering bridge was used for. It didn't matter to him how powerful or weak Zhong Zhouxiao was. In his view, it was just the difference between 1 punch or 2 punch anyway. There was truly no need for him to go to the extent of analyzing his opponent's strength. The heart-tempering bridge is a unique artifact that assesses one's mental fortitude. Those who attempt to walk through it will be placed under immense pressure, and cultivators with weaker minds would find themselves succumbing to the pressure very soon. All in all, there are 10 levels for the entire bridge, and even a typical 7-star pinnacle master teacher would find it hard to reach the end. Previously, Zhongshe has only managed to reach the 4th level. This time, he is intending to see if he will be able to surpass his previous record. The 6-star master teacher shot a perplexed glance at Zhong Xian, but he still chose to explain it anyway. There were no master teachers in Qingyuan Empire who were unaware of the existence of the heart-tempering bridge. For the other party to disregard the number 1 genius of their master teacher pavilion and focus on a mere bridge instead, this had truly rendered him speechless. 4th level. Don't underestimate the heart-tempering bridge. The previous record of the heart-tempering bridge for cultivators beneath 30 is left behind by Yi Shi 2,000 years ago, but even he had only managed to reach the 4th level. The fact that Zhong Shi is able to reach the 4th level is already a formidable feat in itself. However, Pavilion Master Go has high hopes for him. He feels like reaching the 4th level isn't enough, so he tasked Zhong Shi to work harder on his mental fortitude, the 6-star master teacher replied. I see. Zhong Xian nodded. You aren't surprised by his achievement. Seeing how nonchalantly the young man was acting, the 6-star master teacher couldn't help but feel a little stifled within. When he first heard about Zhong Shi's accomplishments back then, He had been so shocked that he fell into a very long moment of daze before he could finally regain himself. Yet, the fellow before him simply replied with a nonchalant "I see," as if the achievement was nothing at all. Did the other party not get what was going on, or was he feigning composure? Surprised? Why should I be surprised? Didn't you say that there are 10 levels? He has only reached the 4th the previous time, so even if he did make some improvement over the past month, at the very most, he would only at the 5th or 6th now. That's still a long way to go before reaching the end. Zhong Xian scratched his head in confusion. Honestly speaking, he had never really cultivated his mental fortitude as well, so he couldn't relate to the difficulty and torture in tempering it. What 4th level and 5th level, he had completely no notion of that at all. Since that was the case, what did he have to be surprised over? You. Hearing those seemingly ignorant words, the 6-star master teacher staggered and nearly spurted blood. He quickly explained, the fact that 7-star pinnacle master teachers would find it hard to reach the other end of the bridge means to say that it's a trial which even Saint 4-dan pinnacle experts are unable to clear. Just think about it, primordial spirit realm experts, despite the superior prowess of their primordial spirits granting them mental fortitude far surpassing that of ordinary cultivators, are still unable to reach the 10th level. Given so, the fact that Zhong Shi, a Saint 3-dan cultivator, was able to reach the 4th level is already a frightening feat in itself. Ah! Zhong Xian replied indifferently. So it's a formidable feat then. How should I react to this matter? Should I be shocked, or should I scream like the others over there? Forget it. Seeing that the other party was still unable to comprehend the significance of the feat, the 6-star master teacher shook his head helplessly and gave up. At this point, he was really starting to doubt whether the young man before him had robbed the master teacher robe and emblem from elsewhere to put it on. To think that there would be a master teacher in Qingyuan City who wouldn't even know about the heart-tempering bridge, as well as the significance of a young man below 30 reaching the 4th level on it. Just how lacking must his general knowledge be? Look. Zhong Shi is about to overcome the 4th level. Whoa, you're right. Impressive. I feel like my admiration for him is shooting up swiftly, as expected of my idol. Woo, I am so agitated at this moment that my tears are about to stain my pants wet. All of a sudden, the piercing shrieks abruptly crescendoed. Zhong Xian and the 6-star master teacher quickly halted their conversation and turned their gazes back towards the heart-tempering bridge. There, Zhong Jiuxiao's figure could be seen gradually nearing the center of the bridge. Despite the tremendous pressure that the latter was clearly under, his body was shaking, and his robe was completely drenched in sweat. He did successfully hold on up to the point. Is that the demarcation of levels? Seeing how exhausted Zhong Jiuxiao was, Zhong Xian couldn't help but take a closer look at the bridge. There, he saw various red lines scattered across the bridge, and Zhong Jiuxiao had passed the 4th and was slowly making his way over to the 5th. As expected of the number 1 genius of our master teacher pavilion, despite only spending a month in the marshlands of the Northern Meadows, his mental fortitude has already grown by such a great extent. At this rate, it might really be possible for him to reach the 5th level today, the 6-star master teacher remarked in agitation. Marshlands of the Northern Meadows? Hearing that phrase, Zhong Xian couldn't help but frown. It hadn't been long since he had arrived at Qingyuan City, but this must be his 3rd or 4th time hearing of that location. Vicious's body parts could very well be there, and it seemed like a soul oracle had settled there as well. Why would the number 1 genius of the master teacher pavilion head to such a dangerous location to temper his mental fortitude? That's right. According to the rumors, there is a place known as the Ghost Cavern in the marshlands of the Northern Meadows that raises one's mental fortitude immensely. It is extremely famous even in the surrounding empires, and there are many master teachers who would head to the Northern Meadows each year to seek it, hoping of training their mind. The fact that Zhong Shi dared to challenge the heart-tempering bridge after spending less than a month there, even improving his record by an entire level, means that it's very likely that he might have found the Ghost Cavern. The 6-star master teacher explained in excitement. Ghost Cavern? What's in there? Zhong Xian's curiosity was piqued. The conventional methods that others used to temper their mental fortitude were the usage of inner demons, illusions, pain, and sourcing for inspiration for enlightenment. So what did the ghost cavern rely on to allow one's mental fortitude to increase swiftly, attracting so many master teachers to seek it? I have never been there before, so I'm not too sure either. However, I heard that there's a body of spring water there that deeply resembles the shape of an eye. Staring into it would allow one to peer into the deepest desires in their hearts, and the longer one stares into it for, the more desires would spring up. As long as one kills off the desires that are reflected in the spring water, their minds would grow more wholesome and resilient. The 6-star master teacher pondered for a brief moment before responding. A body of spring water that can reflect one's deepest desires? Zhong Xian widened his eyes in astonishment. Indeed. I was also as shocked as you when I first heard of the matter, and I didn't believe it either. However, there are simply too many rumors that lend credibility to the case, so eventually, I could only accept it to be true. Also, another thing that is perplexing about the ghost cavern is that it doesn't seem to be fixed to one location. Instead, it moves around, and only the truly fortunate master teachers are able to find it. There were more than 20 master teachers who have headed to the northern meadows along with Zhongshe this time around, but Zhongshe was the only one who enjoyed a tremendous increase in his mental fortitude. It seems like the others simply just aren't as lucky, the 6-star master teacher said. I see. Zhong Xian nodded. From the sounds of it, it seemed like the marshlands of the northern meadows was truly a mysterious place. If he had some time after being promoted to a 7-star master teacher, he would really have to head over there to take a look himself. While Zhong Xian was deep in thoughts, excited shrieks continued resounding from the surroundings, and there was a single one which was particularly piercing. Look! Zhongshe has already reached the 5th level. Turning around, Zhong Xian noted that the source of the sound had come from the millstone bottom lady whom he had encountered just a few moments ago. The latter was staring at the heart-tempering bridge with gleaming eyes, and if she could, Zhong Xian had no doubt that she would pounce on Zhong Zhouxiao at this very moment to bear his babies. After which, he turned his gaze back to the bridge and saw that Zhong Zhouxiao had already passed the 5th red line. However, it seemed like he had reached his limit as well. His body was trembling so intensely that he could hardly move anymore, and it seemed like he would collapse at any moment. This is probably his limit, Zhong Xian noted. Seeing that the show was over, Zhong Xian was just about to leave the area when he suddenly heard a deeply displeased voice echoing from the other end of the bridge, "Send off our guests." Following which, the doors to a residence at the other end of the bridge suddenly creaked open, and 2 armored individuals walked out with awkward looks on their faces. It's Wu Shi. Zhong Xian's eyes lit up. He could tell in an instant that the displeased voice belonged to Wu Shi. It seemed like he was in the residence on the other side of the bridge. I should head over to find him. With this thought in mind, Zhong Xian began walking towards the stone bridge without any hesitation, wanting to cross to the other side. Persevere, persevere. I must persevere on. On the bridge, Zhong Zhouxiao's sweat flowed profusely down his head. At this point, the vision before him had already blurred, and the only thing that was pushing him on was the tenacity in his mind. But no matter how hard he tried to push himself, he was already completely sapped. This was the limit of his mental fortitude, and it was impossible for him to push any further. Eventually, he could only give in. Forget it, I'll just stop here today. Giving up, Zhong Zhouxiao turned around, only to see a young man with a 6-star master teacher emblem pinned on his chest walking over leisurely. From the faint aura that the latter emanated, he could vaguely discern that the latter was a Saint Tudan pinnacle cultivator. The young man walked up to him nonchalantly, nodded in approval, and pulled his arm down in an encouraging gesture. You can do it. After which, he proceeded on to cross the bridge leisurely. It was a trial which left his mind feeling as if it would succumb at any moment, and yet, the other party was able to clear it so easily as if it was a mere stroll down the streets. He cleared the 10th level so easily? The stupefied Zhong Zhouxiao stared at the sight before him with twitching lips. He wasn't the only one who was flabbergasted by this inconceivable situation. The surroundings had suddenly grown so silent that one could literally hear a pin drop. The 6-star master teacher who had been speaking to Zhong Xian earlier had an expression on his face which suggested that he had seen a ghost. The millstone-bottom lady had also halted her fervent cheer dance. In this instant, her mouth was widened even larger than her bottom. Chapter 1160. Bail. After leaving the heart-tempering bridge, Zhongxian shook his head in disappointment. Damn, I thought that it would at least be kind of challenging. He had expected a challenge from the heart-tempering bridge, but when he walked across it, he had realized that it was truly nothing at all. He did not feel the slightest resistance. It did not even jolt his soul in the slightest. All he wanted to do was temper his mental fortitude and try raising his soul depth, but this simple wish just would not come true for him. When he went to the trial of inner demons, his inner demons refused to appear. When he walked over the heart-tempering bridge, he did not feel the slightest thing. Why did life have to be so difficult? Shaking his head in pity, Zhongxian walked toward the room where Wuxi's voice originated from previously and knocked on the door. Walking in, he saw Wuxi seated in the middle with a livid expression. He did not seem to be in a good mood at that moment. Perplexed, Zhongxian asked, "What's wrong?" When he parted with Wuxi earlier, the latter had still had a smile on his face. It had not even been an hour since then, so why would his mood suddenly sour so quickly? Hearing Zhongxian's question, Wuxi rubbed his glabella and said, "The two men earlier came on the orders of Emperor Chu Tianxing to demand King Zhongqing's release, so I chased them out." The emperor wants to have King Zhongqing released. Zhongxian frowned. Does he not understand the crime of slandering a master teacher? While Zhongxian might not have been a master teacher of the Qingyuan Empire, and his rank had not reached 7-star, he was still the principal of a master teacher academy, and there were 100,000 master teachers standing behind him. Considering that the other party had been caught slandering him, wasn't Emperor Chu Tianxing taking him too lightly by demanding King Zhongqing's release without even investigating the matter? If such a thing were to be approved, what would become of the Master Teacher Pavilion's dignity? I sent my men to explain the matter to Emperor Chu Tianxing right after capturing King Zhongqing, Wuxi said grimly. No matter what, King Zhongqing was the first king of the Qingyuan Empire. Considering that the Master Teacher Pavilion had sent out all its forces to apprehend the latter, it might sour the relations between the Master Teacher Pavilion and the royal family if he did not deal with this matter properly. You have already explained this matter, but Emperor Chu Tianxing still sent his men over to demand King Zhongqing's release? Isn't he being far too brazen? Zhongxian frowned. King Zhongqing's act of finding the ex-vice head of the poison hall to frame him was a truly major crime, and yet, Emperor Chu Tianxing, despite knowing that such actions would offend the Master Teacher Pavilion, still demanded King Zhongqing's release. Just what in the world was going through the minds of the nobles of the Qingyuan Empire? Did they not understand that even if it was the royal family of a conferred empire, once they lost the protection of the local Master Teacher Pavilion, they would spiral into a cycle of endless decline and soon face destruction? Wuxi shook his head and sighed deeply. I'm not too sure either, but I think that he might have been emboldened by Vice Pavilion Master Tian. For the authoritative vice head of the Master Teacher Pavilion to work together with a king to accuse a master teacher without investigating the matter properly was truly a huge oversight. The future of a master teacher could very well have been ruined due to it. The only reason Zhongxian was fine was because they had rushed over in time. Otherwise, held captive by the duo, he would have been no different from a prey on the chopping board. As long as the duo pulled some tricks, he could very well have found himself pinned with an accusation that he would never be able to cleanse himself of. Such matters happened far too frequently. It was simply too easy to slander and accuse another of a crime, especially when two of the most authoritative individuals in the Qingyuan Empire were working with one another. Zhongxian nodded. He was just about to reveal his deduction when someone suddenly knocked on the door outside. Following which, a master teacher walked in and reported, "Teacher, Emperor Chu Tianxing of the Qingyuan Empire seeks an audience. He has already arrived. Invite him in." Frowning, Wuxi waved his hand. He had chased away the envoys of Emperor Chu Tianxing just a few minutes earlier, but then the latter suddenly arrived personally. From the looks of it, it seemed like he had already been waiting outside for the results. The master teacher backed out of the room, and not too long later, a middle-aged man dressed in a yellow robe walked in with widened strides. Just like Wuxi, The middle-aged man's cultivation had reached half-leaving aperture realm as well. His eyes carried an authoritative air reminiscent of a majestic tiger. With just a look, it was apparent that his unique aura had been cultivated by the many years he had spent in a lofty position. Wuxia. As soon as the middle-aged man walked into the room, he quickly clasped his fist politely. Although he was the emperor of the Qingyuan Empire, his standing still paled in comparison to Wu Shu, a vice-head of the master-teacher pavilion. Yuan. Take a seat. Wu Shu gestured as he assessed the middle-aged man before him nonchalantly. If your majesty is here to request King Zhongqing's release, I'll have to ask you not to waste your breath. Framing a master-teacher is a grievous crime that our master-teacher pavilion is unable to pardon. I have already reported the matter to the headquarters, so if you continue insisting on this matter, I fear that the entire Qingyuan Empire might be implicated in this issue. Thus, I have to ask you to think twice before speaking. Wu Shu's words were not particularly sharp, but they were devoid of warmth. His tone had made it perfectly clear that there was no room for negotiation. Instead of proceeding on to take a seat, Emperor Chu clasped his fist and spoke in an earnest tone. It truly pains me to see King Zhongqing committing such foolishness, but Wu Shu, you also know that I would have been killed long ago if not for him. Thus, regardless of how big a crime he has committed, I am willing to compensate the Master-Teacher Pavilion for it. Thus, I beseech the Master-Teacher Pavilion to give him and me an opportunity to apologize to Zhongshe personally and plead for his pardon. Apologize? If apologies truly work, what would the world need our Master-Teacher Pavilion for? Wu Shu waved his hands impatiently. Send our guest out. Yes. The Master-Teacher who had led Emperor Chu Tianqing in nodded before walking up to the latter. Your Majesty, this way please. This. The expression on Chu Tianqing's face turned awkward upon hearing those words. He had prepared a long script to convince the other party of the matter, but it seemed like the other party was not intending to give him an opportunity to speak at all. Thus, sighing deeply, he turned around to leave the room. However, before he could step out of the room, a voice suddenly sounded. Wu Shu, hold it for a moment. Didn't he say that he intends to compensate the Master-Teacher Pavilion for the matter? I'm interested to hear how much he's willing to offer to save King Zhongqing. Emperor Chu Tianqing turned around and saw a young man in his 20s, dressed in the robe of a 6-star master-teacher, seated not too far away from Wu Shu. The young man was none other than Zhong Xian. Principal Zhong. Not expecting Zhong Xian to suddenly interject at this moment, Wu Shu turned to look at the other party in bewilderment. A moment later, he closed his eyes and nodded before turning his gaze back to Emperor Chu Tianqing. Since Zhongshe has already spoken on your behalf, I'll listen to your words. Zhongshe. Emperor Chu Tianqing swiftly understood what was going on. He quickly walked up to Zhong Xian and bowed slightly. King Zhongqing has truly erred in attempting to slander Zhongshe. As long as Zhongshe is willing to let bygones be bygones, I'm willing to build a new accommodation to house the students from the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy and unconditionally provide enough cultivation resources for 100 years. On top of that, from this day forth, any student from Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy who drops by Qingyuan City will be able to receive a cultivation technique manual and a few small gifts as a token of our sincerity. We won't allow any one of them to leave Qingyuan City empty-handed. Knowing that the other party was the principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy, Emperor Chu Tianqing chose to center his offer around the academy instead. As expected of the man who had the entire Qingyuan Empire in his grasp, he knew how to make an offer that was irresistible to the other party. Naturally, as a principal of a Master Teacher Academy, Zhongxian's priority would be the welfare of his student, and to be honest, the terms that he had offered were truly generous. With the backing of a conferred empire, it was only a matter of time before Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy became the top of the 4 great Master Teacher Academies. That's not enough, Zhong Xian said nonchalantly. This. Chu Tianqing was visibly taken aback by Zhong Xian's refusal. However, he swiftly recovered and said, Zhongshe, if you have any requests, feel free to raise them. As long as it's within the means of our royal family, we will accomplish it without the slightest frown. Zhong Xian glanced at Emperor Chu Tianqing and said, simple. Add in another 100 concentrated high-tier spirit stones to your previous terms, and you can take back King Zhongqing right now. He was currently severely lacking in cultivation resources. It was far more practical for him to receive concentrated high-tier spirit stones from the other party than to hold a king in custody. In any case, he could easily get rid of King Zhongqing whenever he wanted to, so it did not matter whether the latter remained imprisoned or not. 100 concentrated high-tier spirit stones? Emperor Chu Tianxing widened his eyes in astonishment before a bitter smile surfaced on his lips. Zhongshu, you must be joking. Even if we sold everything in our imperial treasury, we still would not be able to fork out that sum. In the first place, concentrated high-tier spirit stones were a severely lacking commodity in Qingyuan City. Even the Combat Master Hall, an organization that the Master Teacher Pavilion had devoted a large portion of its resources to, only had 10 concentrated high-tier spirit stones in their reserves. No matter how wealthy the Qingyuan royal family was, there was no way it would be able to fork out 10 times the sum in a single breath. Very well then, I shall give you a discount. 50 concentrated high-tier spirit stones, and King Zhongqing will be yours to take away. This is my final offer, and if you can't fulfill that condition, I'll have to ask you to leave. Zhong Xian waved his hand. He also knew that the other party would be unable to afford 100 concentrated high-tier spirit stones. Nevertheless, he had chosen to ask for it so that he would have some room to bargain. This. Chu Tianxing's lips twitched. 50 concentrated high-tier spirit stones still was not a sum that the Qingyuan royal family could afford. Emperor Chu Tianxing contemplated for a long while before responding. Zhongshu, to be honest with you, even with the 10-millennium reign of our Qingyuan royal family, we only have 17 concentrated high-tier spirit stones at the moment. We did have quite a handful of it in the past, but most of them were bestowed to the princes and meritorious subjects. Is it possible for me to give all 17 to you and make up for the rest with valuable medicinal herbs and ores? There was no way he would be able to fork out 50 concentrated high-tier spirit stones, but as long as the other party was willing, he would still be able to find substitutes for the rest. All right then. Here are the ores and medicinal herbs I require, and as long as you are able to gather all of them, I can let King Zhongqing go with just 17 concentrated high-tier spirit stones. Also, I require as many Saint 3 Dan and Saint 4 Dan cultivation technique manuals as possible. Make a copy of every single book in your library and pass them to me, Zhong Xian said as he whipped out a brush and paper and swiftly penned down a list. He was intending on making use of this opportunity to upgrade the Golden Origin Cauldron and Glacier Rain Sword. He already had the main materials, but he was still lacking a few supporting materials. If he were to search for them himself, who knew how long it would take before he was able to gather the required materials? It would be best if he could enlist Emperor Chu Tianxing's help for this matter. Very well. Emperor Chu Tianxing took the list and browsed through it. While there were some materials that seemed to be a relatively rare, with the prowess of an entire conferred empire, he should be able to gather all of them promptly. Thus, he accepted the request heartily. After which, he flicked his wrist and passed a jade container over. Here are the 17 concentrated high-tier spirit stones. Zhongshu, please take a look. Zhong Xian swiftly swept through the contents in the jade container and verified that the other party was not lying. Nodding, he stowed the jade container into his storage ring. Zhongshu and Wu Shi, please give me a moment while I deal with the rest. After saying those words, Emperor Chu Tianxing turned around and issued some instructions to his attendant. As expected of the emperor of a conferred empire, his connections were truly astounding. In just 2 mere hours, the ores and medicinal herbs that Zhong Xian had requested had been successfully gathered. Even the books that Zhong Xian had requested earlier were all stacked up neatly before him. For those that they could not copy in time, the originals were brought over instead. All in all, there were roughly several 100,000 books for Saint 3 Dan and above 10,000 books for Saint 4 Dan. Zhong Xian placed those items into his storage ring before nodding in satisfaction. All right, you may take King Zhongqing away now. Thank you, Zhong Shi. Emperor Chu Tianxing quickly turned to Wu Shi, and upon seeing the latter nod in agreement as well, he heaved a sigh of relief. After which, He followed a master teacher down to the underground prison, to where King Zhongqing was locked up. As soon as Emperor Chu Tianqing left, Wu Shi immediately turned a perplexed look to Zhong Xian, uncomprehending of what the latter was up to. Principal Zhong. Chapter 1161. Chen Zhi's death. Do you feel that I shouldn't have released King Zhongqing? Taking Wu Shi's expression into sight, Zhong Xian chuckled softly. Emperor Chu Tianqing's offer might be alluring, but I don't think that it's a good idea to accede to his request. Wu Shi nodded. Master teachers mustn't be sullied. This isn't a matter about compensation but pride. If a precedent were to be set, it might send out a wrong message about the master teacher pavilion's stand, and others might begin to emulate King Zhongqing's actions. After the affairs that they had gone through together in the Qiuwu Palace, he had come to know the young man before him as an extremely wise and discerning individual. As such, while he didn't agree with the latter's decision, he didn't interject during the discussion earlier on because he knew that the latter would surely have his considerations for making his decision. However, with Emperor Chu Tianqing's departure, he couldn't hold back his intrigue any longer. I'll explain the matter to you, but before that, I would like to ask Wu Shi a single question. Will you speak of the matter concerning Celestial Master Teacher to any other Master Teachers in your Master Teacher Pavilion? Zhong Xian asked. Upon hearing those words, Wu Shi's face immediately turned grim. He quickly set up an isolation barrier around him before assessing his surroundings to confirm that there was no one around. Only then did he respond with a soft voice, Principal Zhong, you must be absolutely careful when you speak of this matter. To respond to your question, due to the huge implications regarding the matter concerning Celestial Master Teacher, there's an absolute need to maintain a silence restraint on the matter. If word were to be leaked to the otherworldly demonic tribe, it could result in a disastrous outcome. Therefore, even if it's to the headquarters, I would choose to maintain my silence. He knew that the young man before him was a Celestial Master Teacher. However, this matter mustn't be spoken of lightly to others. If news were to fall into the wrong hands, it might cause the otherworldly demonic tribe to send its forces frenziedly after the other party. Putting aside the devastating destruction that would occur as a result of that, more importantly, it might result in the premature downfall of the master teacher before him. If that were to happen, he would become a sinner of history. I share the same thoughts as you. However, Vice Pavilion Master Tian revealed the existence of a Celestial Master Teacher right before me. Back when Vice Pavilion Master Tian was interrogating him at King Zhongqing Manor, the other party had once said these words, "From what I know, even a Celestial Master Teacher has recently appeared in the world, so I don't think that the revival of the founder of the Poison Hall is something too absurd to believe." Back then, he had already realized that something was amiss. There was no master teacher who didn't understand the significance of those three words. It was the first time that Vice Pavilion Master Tian was meeting him, and yet, the other party actually revealed such an important news to him. This was a clear breach of the silence restraint. That was also the main reason why he didn't hesitate in dealing with Vice Pavilion Master Tian. You are saying that Vice Pavilion Master Tian knows that you are Celestial Master Teacher? Wu Shi's face darkened. From the looks of it, that doesn't seem to be the case. If anything, he seems to be trying to sound me out instead. Zhong Xian shook his head. Judging from the other party's tone, it didn't seem like the other party knew of the matter yet. However, the fact that the other party raised the term Celestial Master Teacher before him showed that the other party harbored some doubts regarding his identity. However, given how calmly he was able to respond to the other party, not showing the slightest bit of fluster, he should have been able to dispel the doubts in the other party's mind. That's a relief. However, Principal Zhong, you must be careful. Next time, no matter where you head to, you must make sure to bring either me or Hall Master Xing with you for your own safety. Wu Shi advised gravely. As long as the news hadn't leaked, Principal Zhong would only be seen as an incredible prodigy in the eyes of others. An uncommon existence, yes, but there were still a handful of others just like him in the world as well. However, if others were to learn that he was a Celestial Master Teacher, that would truly be a catastrophe. For the time being, there's no need to resort to such measures yet. Such extreme actions would be as good as confirming the suspicions of others. Zhongxian shook his head. If he were to utilize all of the means he had in his hands, he was confident that he would be able to fare much better than with the protection of the duo. On the other hand, if the duo were going to be tagging around him, it wouldn't be convenient for him to utilize those means, and it would place him in a more dangerous position than before. Wu Shi hesitated. Indeed. If he and Hall Master Xing were to follow the other party day in and day out, even those who hadn't doubted the matter previously would start getting suspicious. That would be as good as giving themselves away. There's something wrong with Pavilion Master Tian, and King Zhongqing has colluded with the Poison Hall to concoct huge quantities of poison. I have a feeling that those two matters are related. Also, there is something amiss about Emperor Chu Tianxing paying a visit to you personally and paying such a heavy price just to bail King Zhongqing. I don't believe that he would go so far just to repay the latter for saving his life. Zhongxian analyzed grimly. Hearing those words, Wu Shi suddenly widened his eyes in realization. The royal palace was a cold-blooded place where blood brothers would murder one another for authority. For the most esteemed man in there, the emperor, to risk offending the master-teacher pavilion and pay such a heavy price just to save a mere official, that was indeed something worth looking deeper into. Since we know that there's something wrong with them, instead of stifling ourselves over here to figure out what they are up to, why don't we just release them temporarily and have them untie the dead knot for us before deciding on our next move? They might have captured King Zhongqing, but their clue effectively ended right there. However, if they were to let King Zhongqing go, it might just lead them to something unexpected. You're right, that's indeed a good solution. Coming to a realization, Wu Shi nodded his head in admiration. As expected of Principal Zhong, while he was still engrossed by the situation before him, the other party had already thought many steps ahead. At the current moment, their investigation had already hit a bottleneck. There was no more clue for them to look into, and even if they were to interrogate King Zhongqing and the others, there was no way the other party would reveal their plan to them. However, if they were to release their grasp and allow the other party to do as they pleased, it was likely that the other party would attempt something and give themselves away in the midst of doing so. Yuan, alright, I'll leave the rest to you. There's still some time before night time, and if it's convenient, I would like to pay a visit to the Master Teacher Pavilion's library to take a look. It would suffice to have Wu Shi deal with the investigation. It made no difference whether he participated in it or not. For the time being, his priority was to compile the Saint 3 Dan Heaven's Path Divine Art and raise his cultivation up to the required level, so that he could surpass that Zhong Jiuxiao and successfully claim the nomination slot to enter the Sanctum of Sages. Alright, I'll bring you over then. Knowing that Principal Zhong liked to read books, Wu Shi stood up with a smile to lead the way. At that moment, however, anxious knocking suddenly sounded on the door. Come in, Wu Shi said with a frown. The master teacher who had just left a moment ago rushed into the room with a panicked look. What's wrong? Wu Shi asked. For a 6-star master teacher to lose his bearings, there was no doubt that something huge must have happened. Teacher, bad news. Chenja, he has died. The master teacher gulped down a mouthful of saliva and said, Chenja has died. Wu Shi narrowed his eyes in astonishment. Chenja was the master teacher who had duped Zhong Yinqiu of the details concerning the ancient domain back then and leaked it to the otherworldly demonic tribe. He was the key to uncovering the other traitors within the Master Teacher Pavilion, and he had been locked in the most secure prison in the Master Teacher Pavilion, such that even his cultivation had been sealed. So, how could he suddenly pass away all of a sudden? I'm not too sure about the reason behind his death either. When I checked on him earlier in the morning, he was still perfectly fine. However, when I took another look at him while releasing King Zhongqing earlier, I realized that he has already breathed his last. The master teacher exclaimed anxiously. Chenja was Vice Pavilion Master Tian's direct disciple, a 7-star low-tier master teacher. His abrupt death was no joking matter. Let's head over to take a look, Wu Shi said grimly. He turned to Zhongxian and asked, Principal Zhong, will you follow me to take a look as well? The eyes of the young man before him was far more discerning than his own. The other party could very well notice something that he had missed out. All right. Zhongxian nodded. He also found the matter perplexing as well. In the Master Teacher Pavilion's prison, Putting aside killing any prisoner, even suicide should have been impossible, so how did Chen Zhe possibly lose his life there? This was truly eerie. Following behind the 6-star master teacher, it didn't take long for them to arrive at a cold chamber. In there, they saw a middle-aged man lying motionlessly on the ground, his body frigid cold. He had already breathed his last. Instead of walking over to assess the corpse, Zhongxian first examined the surroundings instead. An airtight formation had been set up around the room, preventing one's spiritual perception from reaching in. As such, it was impossible to send any information in or out. It would be impossible for those within the chamber to communicate with those outside it. After which, Zhongxian walked up to the corpse and activated his Eye of Insight. He doesn't have any physical wounds, but his soul has already dissipated entirely. Zhongxian's eyes narrowed in astonishment. The cause of the other party's death was no other than the dissipation of his soul. His soul has dissipated entirely? Taken aback, Wu Shi quickly placed his hand on the other party's corpse to extend his consciousness into the other party's body. A moment later, his face turned livid. Clearly, he had come to the same conclusion as well. Could it be the same soul-nabbing technique as before? Frowning, a thought came into Zhongxian's mind. Previously, Kang Shu of the Twin Bandits of the Northern Meadows had attempted to use a soul-nabbing technique to kill him, but the Spirit Awakener Guild's building had crushed him to death at that very moment, thus resulting in his failure. He had analyzed the soul-nabbing technique carefully after gaining possession of the other party's memory via soul search, and it bore striking resemblance to the means of the soul oracles. It aimed to draw a cultivator's soul out of his body and confine it, thus rendering him completely powerless to one's whims. Once the technique were to succeed, the body, left without a soul, would slowly wither away and die. Could Chen Zhe have been killed using such a method? Could it be that Vicious has imparted this technique to someone else other than Kang Shu? Zhongxian contemplated doubtfully. However, even if that was the case, why would the practitioner of the technique want to go through the trouble of killing Chen Zhe? Or could it be that Chen Zhe had something to do with Vicious and the Soul Oracle as well? Let's bring his corpse over to Division Head Chiu of the Combat Master Hall and have him help us analyze the situation. After examining the corpse for a while longer, Wu Shi was still unable to make sense of the situation, so he stood up and said, "All right," the 6-star master teacher replied. Division Head Chiu was the head of the Soul Division, and he possessed deep knowledge in the study of souls. While Wu Shi might not be able to determine anything from the corpse, perhaps Division Head Chiu might be able to see something that they couldn't in it. There's no need for that. Zhongxian shook his head. The soul within the corpse had already vanished, so there was no point in finding Division Head Chiu anymore. Principal Zhong. Wu Shi looked at Zhongxian anxiously and said, "Chen Zhe's death effectively means that we have lost our evidence to deal with Vice Pavilion Master Tian. Even though Vice Pavilion Master Tian has made a move on you, the evidence we have at the moment isn't sufficient to indict him for attempting to frame you. In other words, we don't have any reason to imprison him any longer. No matter what, Vice Pavilion Master Tian was a 7-star pinnacle master teacher, the vice head of the Master Teacher Pavilion. Previously, it was due to his direct disciple leaking critical intelligence to the otherworldly demonic tribe that he was implicated and imprisoned for the matter. However, with Chen Zhe's death, there was no longer anyone who could possibly point Vice Pavilion Master Tian to be the culprit of the matter, so naturally they would have no reason why keep the other party imprisoned any longer. As for the crime of slandering and accusing Zhongxian, he could dump it all onto King Zhongqing, and the remaining could be overlooked just on his prestigious identity in itself. Since we no longer have any right to imprison him, just let him go then. Zhongxian shook his head. If not for the fact that he had discovered that there was a fatal flaw in Vice Pavilion Master Tian's primordial spirit through his Library of Heaven's Path, which would hinder him from effectively executing any soul art, he would have truly doubted if Vice Pavilion Master Tian had killed his own student. Let him go. Wu Shi was taken aback. But Principal Zhong, the humiliation that you have suffered because of him. There's no need to be bothered about that matter. In view of Vice Pavilion Master Tian's standing, it won't do us any good to keep him imprisoned for an extended period of time, especially when we don't have sufficient evidence on hand. Furthermore, It hasn't been long since you have been promoted to a Vice Pavilion Master yourself, so you can't afford to forcefully make a move against Vice Pavilion Master Tian yet. Zhong Xian shook his head and said. At the current moment, it was imperative for them that Wu Shi remained in power. Otherwise, they would be powerless to stand against Vice Pavilion Master Tian. All right then. Seeing that there was some sense in what Zhong Xian said, Wu Shi could only reluctantly nod in agreement. Then what should we do next? What do you think that we should do? Zhong Xian returned the question with a smile. I think that we should announce Chen Zhi's crimes publicly and turn everyone against Vice Pavilion Master Tian. This would put Vice Pavilion Master Tian in a disadvantageous position, and we would be in a better position to make a move against him. Wu Shi contemplated for a moment before saying. The news regarding Chen Zhi's betrayal was currently known by only a very small group. If they could pin a crime on Chen Zhi at this moment, Vice Pavilion Master Tian, as Chen Zhi's teacher, would be placed in a precarious position as well. Otherwise, Vice Pavilion Master Tian would truly be getting away scot-free from the entire matter. Wrong. That course of action won't work. Zhong Xian shook his head. It won't work. What should we do then? Wu Shi was taken aback. Simple. We should have Chen Zhi buried with the grandest of master-teacher ceremonies. On top of that, we will compensate his family and accord them with the highest compliments. We shall dub him as a true master-teacher, the role model whom everyone should learn from. Zhong Xian replied with a mysterious smile. Ah! What kind of solution is that? Wu Shi was stunned by Zhong Xian's unexpected suggestion. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.